It took half a while for everyone to watch the video before the boat finally crossed the mountains and passed through the clouds, and an incomparably vast sea area appeared in front of everyone. Is this East Blue? Yamato looked around curiously. It feels no different from West Blue. Isn't it natural? Maria said. Most of the seas in the four seas are the same. Special sea areas are generally gathered on the Grand Line. Although the difference is not big, this sea area can be said to be the most memorable area in the four seas for Moda. Rogtown, Kokoyashi Village, Windmill Village, etc., can be said to be the beginning of everything in the original book. Because the entrance of Upside Down Mountain is relatively close to the Red Line, not long after arriving at East Blue, Moda was able to see the guard gate before entering the Grand Line, Rogtown. Although it was the execution place of One Piece, Moda was not very interested. He just replenished resources here and satisfied the curiosity of other people on the ship about the execution platform. He simply stopped for a few hours and then set off again. Holding the map purchased by the town of Rog, Moda sailed towards the kingdom of Oikot. East Blue, the weakest sea, is also known as the symbol of peace. But because of One Piece's execution in Rog Town, there are several times more pirates than in previous years, and they started to operate in East Blue. The Oikot Kingdom is one of the countries affected by this. Because it has not been a member country recently, it has been invaded by pirates year by year, and the country is on the verge of collapse. Especially this year, due to the unbearable situation, a fierce conflict broke out with the pirates, and the whole country suddenly fell into a very tense battle situation. This is the news that Moda learned from Newsbird not long ago. Knowing the plot of the original work, he naturally rushed to this war-torn country after coming to East Blue. The world government deliberately took this country as a symbol because it did not pay the heavenly gold, and Marine's aid did not arrive in time, within a few weeks. On the contrary, when Moda had come to East Blue and arrived in this country, the flames of war had covered a large area of the entire country, and there were ruins under the bombardment in sight. Even if we wait for Marine's complete rescue afterwards, it is estimated that at least half of the country will be paralyzed, which is no different from destroying the country, and will only be reduced to villages and islands in the future. Under the ruins, there are countless orphans in the field. Moda doesn't care about these things, but maximizes his gaze and perception, scanning the orphans in battle one by one. Finally, in the third ruined town, Moda saw a little girl with blue hair and an orange-haired child in her arms. Moda looked at the girl among them and confirmed that this was the Nami he was looking for. And this blue-haired girl with a cautious face is Nuoqigao. Therefore, the children who lived alone under the flames of war were easily harvested by Moda. Docked on the fleet of the kingdom of Oikot, the waiting crowd did not expect that Moda would bring back two young children who were obviously orphaned by the war. Although they had only been together for a few months, Lafitte naturally knew what Moda was like. Admiral Moda seems to have a hobby of nurturing children, but only on the premise of being favored. Whether it is Maria and Yamato brought out by Wano-kuni, or Perona and Robin from West Blue, they all have relatively high qualifications in their respective abilities that were spotted by Moda when they were young. Obviously, the two women brought here must be the same. But that Nami is unlikely, that is to say, the little girl from Nuoqigao. Moda didn't specifically perceive the broken thoughts in Lafitte's heart, so he didn't know. In fact, when he came to East Blue at the beginning, Moda didn't intend to use it as a destination. The reason why he went to this kingdom was because he happened to read the newspaper on the news, and thought of Nami's birthplace, combined with the approximate time. Improvised. For Nami, Moda had an idea from the beginning, and of course his greedy desire to collect was at work. The twin goddesses of the protagonist group, top-level navigation talent, good at changing combat skills. These are the reasons Moda values, especially the second item, which is the ability to judge the upcoming weather just by changing the gas. This is the ability that Golden Lion has been fascinated by for many years, and Moda is naturally like this. This kind of ability plays a big role on the battlefield, and the Edvor naval battle is enough to reflect it. With Nami's perception of this aspect, coupled with his understanding and application of the weather, if he can get a fruit related to this, there may be a good response. Of course, Moda would be happy to make such a trip if he is both talented and eye-catching. It was an episode outside the original destination of East Blue. After picking up Nami and, incidentally, Nuoqigao, The ship continued sailing, and within a few days, it arrived at the next destination, Shimotsuki village. The ship docked on the shore of the island, and after Moda landed with everyone, he went straight to the Ishin Gymnasium on the island. The gym based on the village island, although it is not considered popular in East Blue, is naturally more famous in Shimotsuki village, and Moda quickly found its location. Under the door plaque marked, Ishin Gymnasium, a little girl about 4 or 5 years old was holding a wooden sword in her forehand, and repeatedly slashed at the invisible air in front of her. After hearing the footsteps, the little girl glanced at Moda, stopped, and then shouted into the house, "Father, there are guests here." Not long after, a man with round glasses and a gentle face came out of the house. Moda looked at the man in front of him, and explained his intention first. "Shimotsuki Koshiro, right, I am Moda, the current general of Wano. You should be familiar with this logo." As he said that, Moda took out a silver medal, which was carved with Shimotsuki's family crest through various exquisite craftsmanship, and the words "Honorary Swordsman" and "Shimotsuki Kozaburo" were engraved on the front and back respectively. Seeing that it was the same silver medal in his father's collection, Shimotsuki Koshiro did not doubt the other party's origin, and invited everyone to the gym. After pouring tea for everyone one by one, and setting up the hospitality, Koshiro looked at the core Moda and asked his own questions. "Your Excellency says he is General Wano, but I remember that General Wano has always been a member of the Kozuki clan? A major incident happened in Wano. Pirates invaded the country. The Wano Kozuki family has no qualified successors. I saved Wano and became a general in accordance with the voice of the people." Moda puts it simply, when you return to Wano, you will gradually understand the specific situation. When Moda said this, Koshiro also understood why the other party came, and immediately showed hesitation. Seeing this, Moda went on to say, "Although I don't know why you left Wano to go to East Blue, your father is a famous knife maker in Wano, and you are also from Wano. After decades, don't you plan to return to your homeland? And speaking of which, has the famous knife maker gone out?" Listening to Moda's words, Koshiro calmed down and sighed. "No, my father passed away not long ago." Hearing this news, Moda couldn't help asking in surprise, "Shimotsuki Kozaburo passed away?" In his memory, the other party appeared in Zoro's memory when he was a child, and Zoro is only less than 2 years old now, but it seems that Shimotsuki Kozaburo has gone a few years earlier than he remembered. Mentioning this, Koshiro is also open to Kaido. "Father, he left 3 months ago. Until my father died, he always wanted to return to the hometown of Wano. At that time, he was stuck in a bottleneck in the realm of forging swords, so he went away to find inspiration, and wanted to completely forge a famous sword that surpassed his realm, so he returned. Wano. This, Moda can also confirm, is indeed a change from a small episode in the plot. He originally wanted to bring it back to Wano to improve the skills of the knifesmiths, but now it seems that it is a pity. As for what Koshiro said before, he also thought more about it, so he didn't forge the famous sword in his heart until his death. Koshiro's father, Kozaburo, is indeed the top swordsmith in Wano, and he created the Yanmo and Hidao Yi characters of the great Qiwuhai show 21 works. Wanting to break through these bottlenecks, all Moda can think of is the top-notch weapon, Supreme Big Sword, series. Kozaburo is indeed an admirable swordsmith, but it's a pity that he didn't get what he wanted. It's really a big loss for Wano. Moda expressed regret, stared at Koshiro and continued, "Of course, besides that, I know you still have some scruples in your heart. It's because you don't want to part with this stadium, right?" Koshiro nodded and did not deny it. "The idea of Ishin is the idea that my father set for himself. I don't have the talent of my father to forge knives. I only have some small achievements in swordsmanship, so I just want to run Ishin continue on. Aren't these problems easy to deal with?" Moda smiled and said, "I just want to continue your father's philosophy. Can I do business in Wano? If you are worried about this related issue, I can serve as my general. Make sure you can have a better Ishin gym than this." With Moda's perception of the heart, of course he knew the reason why Koshiro hesitated at first and did not directly refuse. To put it bluntly, I have been struggling to live in such a village and island. Even if I go to Wano, I am not sure if I have the funds to reopen a gym. This is just such a helpless but real reason. Koshiro said with some incomprehension. I don't understand Modig. The reason for the general's insistence. As I said before, I don't have the talent for forging swords like my father. 2 reasons. Moda raised 2 fingers. You are the son of Shimotsuki Kozaburo. Even though you have lived overseas for many years, you are still a citizen of Wano. Another point is that you said that you have a small achievement in swordsmanship. In fact, I am also a swordsman with good perception ability. The moment I met you, I knew that your swordsmanship is superb. This is all the reason why I want to bring you back to Wano. If your swordsmanship is taught in the gym, the new force of warriors in Wano may be improved. This is why I promise you the gym. Yes, because of you, not your father. Often swordsmen have their own aura, which can be clearly perceived by other warriors who are good at using swords. What's more, it is an undoubted fact that his swordsmanship is superb. The highest swordsmanship expounded by Higoro, the swordsmanship perception that if you don't want to cut, you can't even cut paper, was easily demonstrated to Zoro by the owner of this small gym in the original book. Although I don't know if the opponent has reached this level now, Moda has an inexplicable feeling that coming to a swordsmanship competition with him may greatly improve himself. I see. Can General Moda fulfill my 2 small requests before that? Speaking of such a point, he is still the ruler of his own country. Shimotsuki Koshiro felt that he continued to shirk, that he was a little ignorant, but he had to say something. Please tell me what you want. Moda said. About returning to Wano. Can I take my family and disciples with me? Shimotsuki Koshiro said. Of course there is no problem, as long as they are willing to leave with you. Moda pointedly explained that although this is a Shimotsuki village, not all of them are Shimotsuki's overseas residents. I will take care of this. Seeing Moda's promise, Shimotsuki Koshiro showed some joy, and then said the second request. Another request. I want to have a sword fight with you, General Moda, of course. No matter the result or not, I will promise you to return to Wano. It's not a request, I think so too, Moda replied. Obviously, the 2 people who have both accomplished swordsmanship want to achieve further ideas through the competition. This is also the most direct way to improve their perception after reaching a higher level of swordsman. At the end of the corridor in the house, there is a courtyard dedicated to training and sparring. But both of them understood that if Jianao let go of his subordinates to fight, that place would only bring limitations that would affect the display of strength. So when they came to the open area outside Shimotsuki village, the 2 began to let go of their bodies and minds, and began to confront each other seriously. This is the ability to materialize the potential, and show it as a strong person. This is a common practice in the world of pirates, and the samurai is even more vividly displayed in combination with the sword. For a swordsman, the quality of his sword can be known through the sword power he displays. Only under such a collision, after removing the haki fruit and other external factors, in terms of the purest kendo alone, Shimotsuki Koshiro's sword power is vaguely stronger than Moda's. It should be said that it is indeed one of the most hidden great swordsmen in the original work. Even if it has not reached the point of more than 10 years later, it can be regarded as the swordsman with the deepest sense of swordsmanship in Wano. Then General, I'm going, Shimotsuki Koshiro said, pulling out the Wadaichi text. In an instant, his personal aura suddenly turned into a mountain, giving people a majestic and unstoppable feeling, attacking Moda. Facing the attack falling in front of him, Moda slashed back fiercely. With the slash of Red Sakura's sword, the entire surrounding air seemed to be pulled away, rushing towards the point pointed by the sword tip. Boom. The 2 attacks collided in midair, setting off a frightening violent airflow, almost in the middle of Setsuna. All the flowers and plants within a radius of tens of meters were all withered, exposing bare branches and leaves, swaying in the strong wind. Call out. Call out. The next moment, 2 piercing sounds sounded one after the other. This was after the 2 made their first move. The figure flashed, and the speed of swinging the knife reached the speed of sound, and then they fled towards the opposite side. The spider web-like cracks spread to the surroundings under the constantly flickering figures of the 2. It was full of interlacing under the shadow of swords, lights and swords. Even the silhouettes of people were so fast that it was dazzling, so that the crowd watching from a distance couldn't tell who was attacking and who was receiving the attack. When? Only in the terrifying airwaves that have been raging all the time, there are continuous sounds of violent collisions of weapons, which are continuous like a violent storm. As father so strong. Kuina looked at the two people who were fighting. Even from a distance, she could feel the terrifying aura surrounding the two people fighting. Since she was born, this is the first time she has felt such a terrifying strength from her father. Although she is only a kendo beginner and doesn't understand its content, this level of fighting has already made her think in her heart whether he has the ability to inherit his father's mantle. The sword moves between the two continued to fight, and neither of them used the armament haki, which can increase the power, or even Moda's conqueror's winding. As mentioned at the beginning, this confrontation is the purest way of swordsmanship. Boom. The two sword chi collided fiercely in midair again, exploding a dazzling cyan brilliance and setting off a violent air current. Although he doesn't know how the other party feels, Moda can clearly feel the changes in himself, as if there is a kind of epiphany that has been honed over time. In the constant confrontation of sword energy, sword momentum, and sword skills, he gradually became clear and enlightened. Sword power. It can be said that the watershed between a swordsman and an ordinary swordsman, through the continuous deepening of the sword power, the application of cutting steel in the air comes from this. For sword power, it is like reaching the innate perception of a swordsman. This kind of understanding is erratic and unpredictable. How to use it to achieve a further change is the reason that restricts the death of most swordsmen. But at this moment, it seems to have entered a new state, the concentration, diffusion, change of the sword, and everything related to it. Moda feels that he seems to be able to change as he wants. Even in Koshiro's confrontation, Moda doesn't even need to fight back with slash wave, sword skills, etc. It is the most direct parry and block, and the diffusion application under the sword force can directly achieve the easiest and most convenient way to block and even counterattack. It seems that, General Moda, you have also entered that artistic conception. Koshiro watched the opponent's more and more fierce and tricky attacks, and could easily resolve his own sword skills, so he couldn't help but speak. Mood? Moda said, also stopped attacking, feeling his inexplicable state at the moment, but couldn't tell what it was like. I was fortunate enough to experience it a few years ago, and I have been thinking about this state since then, but I have never felt it again. Koshiro explained. This feeling is like the whole body is integrated into the sword in the hand. Everything related to it can be easily controlled. It is able to surpass the comprehension of most swordsmen. I call it the artistic conception of the sword. At that time, in this state, I managed to chop a piece of paper with the knife in my hand. This is a situation that children will feel speechless or even disgusted when they hear it, but it is a miraculous thing for a swordsman who understands Zangang. Moda listened to the explanation, and realized something. Now he really seems to have a complete sense of control over the opponent's red Sakura. He is also capable of doing what Koshiro said, even with a poor short sword. The degree to which Koshiro's Wadaichi text clashes without breaking. When I entered this state, it was only for a few moments, far from the level that General Moda maintained for so long. Maybe you, General, will fully understand and enter that level of state first. Koshiro looked at Moda with envy. You must know that he has been in contact with pottery under his father's pottery since he was a child, and he is already in his 30s. If it weren't for knowing that the other party is General Wano-kuni, and having the comforting mentality that it is natural for the other party to be different from your own level, then the age that looks much younger than yourself would definitely not be more than envy. Of course, this is because Koshiro doesn't know that Moda has only been in contact with Kendo for 6 years, otherwise there may be more exaggerated moves. Moda thought of something, and his whole body began to float into the air, standing in the sky. Looking at the ocean outside Shimotsuki village, without applying any blessing from Haki, and without the assistance of Red Sakura Ultimate's attack, Moda just relied on his perception at this moment, and slammed down towards the chaotic sea. Call out. The bright sword energy turned into a solid body after leaving the Red Sakura, and in the form of a flying slash, it slashed straight to the sea with amazing power. The astonishingly powerful slash extended from the sea to the sky, and the unparalleled sword force tore through all obstacles. Boom. There was a loud bang. Sky, the sea, was split directly. A huge and clear gully, like a skyfall or a tsunami, was displayed in front of the people on the mountain and Koshiro. The drifting clouds were directly divided into two, and a huge gap was also torn open in the front of the sea. Countless lives under the sea were wiped out instantly under this slash. This was an extremely spectacular scene, and all the people watching the battle opened their mouths in astonishment, even exaggerating as if their jaws dropped to the ground. After the huge ripples lasted for a long time, the sea realized that it had been split open like a gap, and the seawater that was smashed by the two sides rushed into it violently and madly. Maria Yamato, who admired Moda very much, and others, their eyes directly turned into star eyes, shouted with excitement. Unlike the others, Kuina did not join in the intense praise from the people beside him. Looking at the figure slowly descending from the sky, the hand holding the wooden sword tightened again and again. It seems that there is no need to say anything about the results of this competition. You are worthy of becoming General Wano-kuni, and I didn't expect you to have the ability to fly. Watching Moda's falling figure, Koshiro put down the sword in his hand. Looking at this slash, he really changed from envy to jealousy of his talent. If you've ever seen the news of Flying Admiral in the newspaper, if you compare it carefully, you will know that it is me, Moda pointed out. After seeing him for the first time, he was not as surprised as Lafitte and Robin. Moda knew that the other party did not recognize his well-known identity in the sea. This battle has really benefited me, and I have a clearer understanding of your strength. I dare say that there are really few warriors in Wano-kuni who are better than you. If there is a gymnasium opened by you, it will definitely bring more outstanding warriors to the country. Listening to Moda's words, although there is still a lot of gaps in his heart, but with the recognition of his swordsmanship ability and the fact that he has gained something, Koshiro smiled. Kaido, you said that, I have already started to return to Wano-kuni. Some look forward to it. That is my hometown. There is a legend of the sea that slays the dragon and the sword hero. It is also a country of famous warriors. I don't know if I can make progress after communicating with other swords in the country. How are the students there different from now? As he said, Koshiro returned to the dojo soon after the battle and was preparing to move out. They didn't plan to stay here any longer, and asked someone to help Koshiro pack his luggage. Moda and others had already returned to the boat and waited. There were not many accompanying items, but after sorting out the relevant items, Koshiro looked at the residence where he had lived for decades, and now he was really reluctant to leave here in various senses. But in order to pursue his ideals and return to his distant hometown, Koshiro made up his mind and took Kuina and a green-haired child to the beach. It seems that this is the only one of your so-called students. Moda stood on the shore, looked at the people beside Koshiro and smiled. I have tried my best, but I still can't talk to their parents, so I can only refund the tuition fees to them. Koshiro looked a little helpless, and pointed at the 2-year-old boy next to him. He is the child of an old friend of mine, named Roronoa Zoro. He was helpless, so I simply brought him to Wano-kuni and taught him swordsmanship. Zoro. Moda nodded, looking at the boy and girl beside Koshiro at the same time. I have a hunch that they will become great warriors of Wano-kuni in the future. Needless to say, Zoro's potential and achievements. In the later stage, he mastered the Conqueror's Winding, which can be regarded as the top level among the future Emperor's mates. And Kuina also inherited Koshiro's powerful kendo talent, a genius who can make Zoro 2,000 times without a single victory. If she didn't die young, she must be a top female swordsman like Gion or even better. As Moda said, Koshiro is only regarded as an alternative kind of praise and encouragement. After all, who knows what the future holds, not to mention that Zoro and Kuina are still young. Excuse me, General, can I learn swordsmanship from you in the future? After hearing the compliment, Kuina stepped forward and said to Moda with determination. When chatting with those girls before, Kuina knew that this is the master Moda who is highly respected by them, and will often teach them their strength. Although she wants to inherit the mantle of her father's gym, Kuina doesn't think that the only way to advance in swordsmanship is to follow her father. At the age of 5, after seeing the amazing swordsmanship displayed by Moda, she will naturally not think more about other things, just want to learn in a stronger direction. Moda didn't answer immediately, but looked at Koshiro. The latter obviously didn't expect her daughter's sudden request, but seeing the longing in Kuina's eyes, Koshiro bent down and said, although it's a little hard to say, I still beg General Moda to agree to Kuina, and I will try my best to repay the general's kindness. Kuina looked at Koshiro with some surprise, not knowing that it was just a plea. why his father suddenly made such a pleading gesture. Koshiro didn't know about Maria's conversation with her. He only knew that Kuina's request was not purely for guidance but for learning. Regardless of whether the other party was a general of the country, his status was noble, and in terms of swordsmanship, he was powerful. A good swordsman is generally not willing to teach others easily. Although Koshiro has a patriarchal cognition in swordsmanship, he is essentially a father who cares for his daughter. Koshiro, there is no need to act like this. Moda lifted Koshiro, who was bent over. I can grant your request. Kuina's talent in kendo is still worthy of Moda's cultivation. Of course, this is based on the fact that Moda likes it. If it is just an ordinary person, even if Koshiro makes such a request, Moda will refuse without hesitation. Koshiro, who doesn't know this, has a layer of gratitude to Moda in his heart, and a layer of belonging and desire to repay the country he has not seen yet. In this way, after passing through Shimotsuki village, Moda got Zoro and Kuina, two kendo geniuses, as well as Shimotsuki Koshiro, who is gifted to become a great swordsman, and who is willing to teach swordsmanship and improve the level of Wano-kuni samurai. In general, the harvest rich. For East Blue, Moda still has some deep memories, which are all involved with red hair pirates. One is the form of the protagonist Luffy, human fruit, phantom beast, Nika, and the other is the song Fruit that also destroys the world in the movie version. For destroying the original work, Moda will not have any entanglement mentality. As long as it is beneficial to him, he will implement it without hesitation. So he didn't think about snatching the sun god fruit, but he gave up after thinking about it. Leaving aside the situation that Nika has not yet appeared, even the statement that it has will is also a troublesome point. Only with its approval can the word awakening be achieved, and the one that does not achieve awakening is just an ordinary rubber fruit. After hundreds of years, only Luffy has awakened alone. One can imagine its strictness. Even if Moda snatches it, it is just a rubber fruit. Even if the development effect is good, the significance is not the greatest. Card theory, attracting the attention of the world government, allowing Moda to plan for greater benefits. Apart from the consideration of rubber fruit, Gurgur fruit can become the target of Moda. The fruit of singing, as the fruit ability of Uda in the theatrical version, is the second ability in the world known as being able to destroy the world. Not to mention musical notes, Demon King of songs and other physical abilities. The most buggy key is that capable users can use singing to pull people's spirits into the illusion they created. What's more special is that this kind of introduction is mandatory, ignoring Haki's defense, even ignoring the distance limit. Even if you don't face to face with the ability user, you will be controlled by her just by hearing the singing through the phone bug. Just controlling the mind is not enough. What is unsolvable is that when the mind enters the virtual world, the body left in the real world can also be manipulated by the capable person. In short, from the moment you hear the singing, you are completely reduced to a puppet of a capable person. This extremely domineering ability is even better than the bugs of Tongchu fruit, so it has the ability to destroy the world in an alternative sense. And the ability user of the song Fruit, the current Sea Circle calendar 1503, will be adopted by the red-haired Uda who has formed the pirate group for a while. It's just that the world is so big, and Moda doesn't know the exact location where Uda was found by the red hair, but only knows that the treasure box in the prize where it was found was found. It is also not realistic to ask about redheads through Shaki, so it is impossible to get ahead of redheads. But even if he is lucky enough to be the first, Moda is not sure if Uda already has the fruit of singing at that time. If not, he is not sure that Uda will be able to get the fruit of singing as it is developing. There is still a big difference between having and not having one. A beautiful singer and a beautiful singer also have a terrifying bug ability, so it goes without saying who to choose. So, I just kept an idea. Moda knew that the year Hongfa went to Windmill Village, Uda had already demonstrated the ability of singing fruit, and was abandoned by Hongfa on the island because of an accident. At that time, it was also a very good time to control Uda. So, after leaving a suspense for a follow-up, this trip to East Blue has come to an end with a rewarding experience. There are only North Blue and South Blue left in the Four Seas without exploration in a general sense, but Moda does not intend to continue sailing in the Four Seas, but is heading towards the Grand Line with consideration. Because it is flying in the direction of Gaia Island, the route does not change much from the plot. Except for passing by the medical sanctuary Magnetic Drum Island, where he specially obtained medical equipment and technology, Moda did not stop any further. It wasn't until the fleet saw the approximate location of Magic Valley Town that they began to fly straight up towards the sky, heading for the Sky Island where gold and thunder were buried. Without relying on the upwelling current, or even worrying about the influence of the White Sea on the ability user, directly in the tide-proof cabin, Moda manipulated the boat to easily rush up to a height of 10,000 meters, break through the sea of clouds, and arrive at the most famous Sky Island. Unlike other islands in the world, this should also be one of the symbols of the magic of the sea. However, except for the newcomers East Blue and Yamato who looked excited and curious, everyone else was relatively ordinary. As far as Moda's air navigation is concerned, the Sky Island seen on the road is not 10 or 5. Haven't you already seen Sky Island? Why are you still yelling like this? Perona looked at the excited Yamato and said helplessly. Because this Sky Island is obviously different from other Sky Islands. Yamato ran back and forth on the deck, wanting to see the surroundings from different perspectives. This Sky Island is several times larger than those, there must be something interesting in its place. Yamato is right, this island is a magnificent place. Unlike Yamato, the information uttered by Moda immediately attracted the attention of everyone on the deck. Looking at several probing gazes, Moda continued without hesitation. There is a story in the sea called Rolando, the Liar King. In the story, Rolando once visited Gaia Island and found the golden treasure there. Shandora, but after he returned to the country to report, there was no trace of the golden land on Gaia Island, and he was also executed for cheating. Because some people may not know this story, Moda will briefly tell the general content. Not even mentioning the follow-up results, smart people get the point right away. This is the sky above Gaia Island. If Rolando is not lying, this Sky Island may have been a part of Nagaia Island. For some reason, it became Sky Island. The land of gold is not Gaia Island below, but on this Sky Island? Lafitte said his guess, which is also what other people think of. The spectacular place Moda said, plus that story, must be the golden town of Shandora. Hobak suddenly became like Yamato, with ecstasy on his face because of excitement. The land of gold, just listening to it, one can imagine the wealth he owns. Let the ship lift off again. Ignoring the diversion ocean that entered Sky Island, Moda flew directly towards the holy place on Sky Island Apeado. Under the dense jungle, ignoring the obstacles brought by various branches and vines, the ship came to a slightly open area in the center, like a canyon, independent of the center of the huge jungle. And in the canyon, there is a huge ancient ruin. Even if there is no sunlight, it still emits a dazzling golden light. Is that the land of gold, Shandora? Huobake stuck his whole body on the railing of the boat. If the railing wasn't high enough, he would have been able to fall out of the boat with the extent of his stretched body. But seeing the bright golden light, it might be more in line with his wish to fall down. Especially when flying in the air, the angle of view is extremely wide, but one can fully see how huge this gold-covered Shandora is. The entire city, whether it is the clock tower or the houses, is all gleaming gold. Even though he has seen the original book, the grand and spectacular scene still makes Moda a little lost. Adding all this together, it is possible to say that there are thousands or even trillions of Baileys. In the original book, a few bags of gold can be exchanged for hundreds of millions of Baileys. A few bags of gold can't even compare with a clock tower, let alone the entire township here. And with Moda's ability, bringing the entire golden land back to Wano is a piece of cake. Even in the absence of people, it will reach an altitude of tens of thousands of kilometers, and it can also ensure extremely high concealment and safety. To sum up, in a word, it is completely developed. After the ship landed, Hobak was the first to rush towards Shandora excitedly, followed by the others. Moda just blesses Shandora with Piao Piao's ability, looks at the scale roughly, and then the people on the ship are still exploring and satisfying below. After ordering everyone to move around on their own for a while, he then flew out of the island by himself. Apart from gold, he came here for another purpose. That is one of Logia's top fruits that has disappeared in the sea for a long time, thunder fruit. The currency of Sky Island is different from that of the sea, which is settled in the unit of Ike. In the case that 1 Bailey is equal to 10,000 Ike, after Moda bought a lot of Sky Island's special shells, He also inquired to the location of Burka. It is located in the south of Sky Island, a small island of the same level as Angel Island, and the distance is not troublesome by means of flying. After arriving at the destination, it is the same as the Angel Island I encountered before, all of which are built with pure white sky as the main tone, rather than the pink color that should be in the name. Although he has no wings, but because he is from Qiwuhai and spends a lot of money, the Burka people not only do not reject Moda, but welcome them. Of course, people from Sky Island who have no wings will be regarded as monsters and treated differently, just like the scrawny Enel in front of him. This is also the Burka heterogeneity that I saw through inquiring. The other party has not eaten devil fruit at this time, that is to say, thunder fruit, which is still in a hidden corner of Burka. Your name is Enel, right? The young man curled up in the dilapidated house heard the noise and looked up. It was a strange man talking to him, but it made Enel very excited because he saw someone who had no wings like him. Are you the same kind of person as me? Enel sat up and asked. No, I'm from Qiwuhai from below. Listening to Moda's denial, Enel's bright pupils dimmed. He knew Qiwuhai and the characteristics of Qiwuhai people, after all, he had heard of it when he was a child. Then why are you looking for me? I'm a monster. Even if you are from Qiwuhai, you will be rejected by those guys. Enel said lightly, and lay down again. The change in attitude was obvious enough. Moda put the exchanged tens of billions of ikes in front of Enel. I've come to ask you about some things. If there is any news, you can take all of these. Hearing the sound of coins ringing, Enel regained his spirits. Looking at the thick money bag, he couldn't help but swallowed and said, Ask me? Those people outside will know more about Burka, right? Maybe there is some news that only you know. Moda said purposely. I don't know if you have seen a fruit with strange patterns. Fruit? Enel suddenly looked at Moda with an inexplicable gaze, and then returned to the dilapidated house behind him, and soon came out with a blue spiral fruit shaped like a lightning symbol. Is this the one you're talking about? Although there is no comparison with the devil fruit illustrated book, Moda is 100% sure that it is thunder fruit just by looking at it. Looking at one of the strongest logias, Moda felt hot in his heart, nodded and said, That's it. These ikes can be regarded as buying this fruit from you. Even if you think about it, you won't live a long life. A worse life than this. Although it is a transaction, if Enel refuses, the follow-up situation can be imagined. Not knowing that Moda's transaction involves life and death, Enel didn't hesitate, handed the fruit to Moda, and then took those ikes away without hesitation. But he seemed to lose something in his heart, feeling an inexplicable melancholy in his heart. Enel asked, Can I know the use of that fruit? At first, he thought that the fruit was highly poisonous. After all, it was so weird. He thought that if he couldn't hold it any longer, he would take it and kill himself. Now that he saw Moda's situation, he began to suspect that it might not be the case. Perceiving the Moda in Enel's heart, he didn't expect such a reason, but it was a little funny, and he actually made himself cheaper because of this. But for all those who don't know devil fruit, they will subconsciously think so. After all, the weirder it is, the more dangerous it is, and it's more or less deep in the genes. For you, this fruit may bring you danger, but for me, this fruit is of great value. Moda said eloquently, in every sense, you very lucky. Hearing this, after thinking that the fruit was really dangerous, the melancholy in Enel's heart disappeared, but looking at the back of Moda turning away, he couldn't help shouting, If you are from Qiwuhai, can you I also take it to Qiwuhai? I don't have that time. As a man, I have to realize my goal by myself. If you want to go to Qiwuhai, you have to rely on yourself. Moda's voice came, but he didn't stop, and left directly with the thunder fruit. The reason Moda remembers Enel is thunder fruit. If the other party has already taken thunder fruit, Moda doesn't mind cultivating Enel. But without thunder fruit's Enel, Moda doesn't have so many leisurely minds when he is not sure about his talent. Although he is not a bad person, he is not a good person either. It has been half a day since I returned to Shandora, the hometown of gold. During the journey, I remembered that there is a historical text located at the base of the golden bell. After using the ability to directly dismantle it, Moda took one of them. In Shandora, unlike before, there was an extra giant snake that was dealt with. In half a day, everyone picked out a lot of favorite items. Some were gorgeous jewelry, some had strange shapes, and some just took a few random pocket money as companions. Only Qiwuhai seemed to be slowly bringing a few big bags back to his room. The money-greedy character can be seen at a glance. Even though he was on this boat, he never concealed it. Compared with the gold in the entire Shandora, Moda doesn't care much about Hogback's small amount. After returning to the boat, everyone greeted them one after another, and immediately noticed the items brought back by Moda. An ancient inscription stone, a package containing things, and a devil fruit in a hand. Is this what Admiral Moda gained after he left? Lafitte was surprised. He didn't expect Moda to get a sea-secret treasure after leaving for a long time. Moda nodded and explained. I found this when I was buying Sky Island specialties. People in Sky Island don't know the effect of the fruit, so I bought it for only a few million Baileys. Millions of Baileys? Everyone exclaimed. Isn't this equivalent to making a lot of money? Lafitte listened, turned around and walked towards the cabin, preparing to take out the Devil Fruit illustrated book, and compare the abilities of this fruit. Not long after, Lafitte walked out of the cabin, and said tremblingly, Admiral Moda, this fruit is incredible. The devil fruit you bought for several million Baileys is one of the strongest logias in the illustrated book, and it is also one of the most capable thunder fruits. Huh. The crowd shouted again in shock. Millions of dollars bought the top logia thunder fruit, what a blessing. It seems that this trip to Sky Island is more than a big harvest of the Golden Land. Moda looked at Yamato, holding out the fruit. Yamato, you can take this fruit. How powerful the thunder fruit is may not be clear to Yamato now, but just listening to what Lafitte said before, he also knows how precious this fruit is. So, Yamato pointed to himself uncertainly and said, Give me? Moda nodded. Of course, Yamato, don't you want to follow me all the time? If you eat it, you will become one of the most terrifying abilities in the sea, and you will also become one of the most powerful retainers around me. This is the best result after Moda's thinking. After all, I don't know whether the phantom beast species of Deko Genshin will appear in Wano-kuni or Kaido's hands. Naturally, Moda doesn't have too much expectation for the uncontrolled fruit. What's more, the top-level Logia will never be much weaker than the phantom beast, especially when compared with Deko Genshin in terms of comprehensive thunder. If it were someone else, he might have to struggle a bit. Yamato, who has a straightforward personality, did not hesitate after hearing Moda's words. He decisively took the thunder fruit that was handed over, and said firmly, I will definitely like Uncle Jhin, he will become the most powerful person around Moda. What Master Moda said as one. Perona floated in the air dissatisfied, and then quickly urged Yamato to take it, wanting to see what would happen. Under the urging of everyone's eyes, Yamato opened his mouth and bit the fruit in his hand, and it melted in his mouth. The taste immediately made him show a painful and disgusted expression, but he resisted the nausea and ate it all abruptly. Finish. The process of gaining abilities is painful, and anyone who has taken devil fruit here knows that feeling. But after that, it is the beginning of a lucky change. Quick. What's the effect? It is said that Logia can elementalize the whole body. After everyone discussed, Yamato shook his palms, and then there was a crackling sound, and traces of blue-white electric current emanated from his palms, and immediately flooded his whole body. As a famous disaster in nature, the power of thunder and lightning is needless to say. Seeing the flash of lightning around Yamato, Maria and the others immediately avoided a large circle. The electric current shot out into the air, and then suddenly turned into a huge thunderbolt, blasting towards the island below, and instantly intertwined. The ground was blasted into a huge crater of scorched ash under high temperature. Yamato was full of joy and said, This fruit is really powerful. Now I feel that my whole body has inexhaustible power, and I can control the thunder and lightning as I like. As if demonstrating, Yamato's whole body turned into thunder again. With just a flash of thunder, he appeared at the door of the cabin tens of meters away, and then returned to Moda in a flash. The effect of the fruit is still great, especially Logia, which is said to be the type that ordinary people will become strong after eating it, not to mention Yamato. What you eat is a very outstanding thunder. But the inexhaustible power is not enough too likely, it should just be the impact of your current physical fitness. Lafitte explained, and at the same time expressed his emotion that the Admiral attached great importance to Yamato. You must know that Yamato has a relationship with Kaido of the Beasts. If the other party knows that Yamato has taken the top Logia fruit, they will definitely snatch it back. The admiral still gave Yamato the thunder fruit, obviously because he has a high opinion of him. Grasp and value. In the sea, electricity has a wide range of functions, and its power, speed, range, and thunder are also the most comprehensive in Logia. You have to develop it well, it is the ticket that can quickly lead you to the road to the strong, said Moda. Yamato nodded with a grin. After thunder fruit had an explanation, everyone then looked at the other two items brought by Moda. Meeting his eyes, Moda brought the package containing things, revealing a lot of shell-shaped items inside. These are Sky Island shellfish, a specialty of Sky Island. Among them, there are shellfish that are widely used in daily life, such as lamps, stoves, fire, water, recorders, etc., and there are also other shellfish used for fighting. This is brought back to Wano-kuni for research. Yes, maybe it can be used as a specialty of Wano-kuni. Some shellfish are quite useful and novel. Anyway, they are cheap, so Moda simply brought back a big bag. As for this, Moda pointed to the ancient stone tablet square behind him. This is the historical text widely circulated in the sea. It just so happens that we have a scholar of this, so we will bring her back to study and study. Naturally, knowing who Moda was talking about, everyone couldn't help but look at Robin. Thank you, Master Moda. Robin was a little flattered, but still a little moved to thank Moda, and then said, but I have studied it before. The Golden Bell is located in a relatively far area in Shandora, especially for Robin, who is still a child. Moda did not expect that the other party had already explored it in half a day. But it is indeed an obvious building, and with the assistance of flower fruit, it is in line with the situation when you think about it this way. Since it was useless, Moda put it back in Shandora. What is that content? Is it the blank 100-year history you are concerned about? Maria asked curiously. Regarding Maria's question, Robin, as a historian, will translate it for everyone to understand, even if it does not involve the feelings of a little sister. However, hearing this sentence now, he hesitates. Obviously, that content is not the so-called blank 100-year history. And this is what Moda thinks this historical text can really bring to itself. Say it or not, it's your own decision, no one will blame you, Robin. As I said at the beginning, I'm not very interested in the so-called past and the ancient weapon that it may record. Say whatever you want. With your expression, you can guess without explaining it. It should contain information about ancient weapon. Moda just said this important information directly, and Lafitte, Koshiro and Hobak, who knew the role of ancient weapon, immediately looked at them in shock. The words also point to this point. Robin thought for a while, and did not answer with a lie, nodded and then said, it is about the location of the ancient weapon Poseidon. Just as Robin paused, intending to tell the content of the historical text, Moda stepped forward and said, the location of Poseidon is on the Fishmen Island, right? Did you know? Robin exclaimed. Is it true? Admiral, General. Seeing Robin's reaction, the three of them were shocked by the information again. Yeah, what a surprise. Moda said nonchalantly. Isn't this surprising? Hobak yelled in his heart. Poseidon. That has the terrifying ability to command all sea kings in the sea. This kind of ancient weapon, which everyone in the world dreamed of, was actually said directly in this ship at this moment. Then what if I say, I still know the information and exact location of Pluton? Moda laughed and said, these ancient texts of the historical text were created by the former Wano-kuni. As a general, I naturally know some information more or less. Of course, this was a lie, but it was impossible for anyone present to detect it. Moda's way of doing this naturally has his own considerations. Anyway, he is surrounded by his own retainers or courtiers, so there is no possibility of betrayal, so even if this information is spoken out, there is no need to pay too much attention to it. Moreover, the main purpose of bringing this topic up is to resolve the stubbornness that Robin has always had in his heart. The effect is obviously there. Unlike the few people who were shocked, Robin thought a lot in his mind after being surprised for a short time. Because of her experience, she always had an idea in her mind that the people who took the initiative to find her were either for high rewards or for her ability to interpret ancient weapons. Just like Moda at the beginning, even if it wasn't a bounty, Robin also believed that the other party came for ancient weapon. The so-called words of knowing more and not being interested were just to cover up what he really thought. But now, under such circumstances, only then did Robin feel in a daze that what Moda said might not be a false statement. Maybe Moda really didn't come to her for the ancient weapon. So, that is to really value one's ability, and come here for the so-called potential of the manager. After a few days, she also knew what the position of the manager is, which can be called a secretary, but just for this reason, Moda is willing to accept himself as a person who is pursued by the world government. Not for anything else, just for yourself. For a while, Robin's awe of Moda began to slowly dissipate, followed by an inexplicable intimacy. Little ones. Take that boat to Laozi. Kill all the men. Keep the women and sell them at the Sabodi archipelago not far ahead. The characteristics of the Grand Line, apart from the elusive bad weather, are the pirates that can be seen everywhere, coming from the four seas. In this route, no matter whether it is a merchant ship or a civilian ship, under the banner of no background, they never dare to appear on the Grand Line, because plundering at sea is the most common behavior of pirates. The direction of the shouting was a pirate battleship with a skull flag flying. When he found a huge ship in front of him, and there were no flags such as the Chamber of Commerce in the pirate logo, he immediately became greedy. Such a ship is bigger than his own pirate ship, even if the money in it is not counted. The ship itself is worth a lot of money. They have gone through untold hardships, and they are not far from the Sabodi archipelago, the finish line of the first half. Now they are short of resources to enter the new world. It just so happens that when they are about to doze off, the pillow comes. Under the captain's call, the pirate ship has accelerated towards the ship ahead. As everyone knows, they are already the fifth such pirate group. And if the previous pirates were successful, there would be no fifth case. Roads of sky blue currents surged, making crackling sounds, and then suddenly turned into thunderous lights that shot straight into the sky. An invisible aura rushed over, and the pirate captain, who had gone through various battles, immediately realized that something was wrong. There was an obvious change in the air above the ship. Almost when he subconsciously wanted to yell out to dodge, a huge thunder column of tens of meters fell from the sky instantly, crashing onto the pirate ship. The judged thunder was completely submerged, and the ship was directly smashed into slag under the damage of the lightning's high temperature. The burst of high-temperature airwaves formed a terrifying impact, sweeping away layers of airwaves and static electricity, sweeping across the sea. This attack was naturally Yamato, who had just taken Thunderfruit not long ago. Just as the Grand Line has no shortage of people who actively seek death, they floated Shandora tens of thousands of meters above, and were guarded by Koshiro and Hobak who asked for orders, so Moda simply sailed the ship normally on the sea. These pirates, like West Blue, are the training stones for Moda to hone his subordinates and others. But there are not many people who need to practice this, just Perona, Maria and Yamato, and Lafitte who occasionally takes the initiative. For example, Kuina Zoro is too young and lacks strength. Robin simply doesn't want to participate. In contrast, she prefers to read some books. Recently, she has begun to work harder to study management secretaries and so on. Knowledge. Looking at this attack, even though she has seen it no less than 3 times, Perona still feels very terrified. It seems that Yamato is becoming more and more proficient in the development of Thunderfruit. Lafitte is also a little emotional. No matter how many times he sees this terrifying power of lightning, it can make people feel thrilling. That's what Moda taught me too. Yamato lowered Kaido with his right hand full of lightning. Yamato doesn't know much about lightning knowledge, but under the guidance of Moda for a few days, he can understand the various characteristics of thunder and develop them accordingly, including the so-called electrotherapy developed by Enel in the original book, and radio waves, etc. that have the effect of increasing knowledge and color. Electricity is the greatest discovery of the century, and its application is definitely more than that. After Yamato is gradually proficient in the ability of thunder, it will definitely be more comprehensive than Enel's ability. However, when he returned to Wano Kuni, Moda planned to find a group of scientists to give Yamato some knowledge in this area. Although he has a lot of knowledge about electricity, he is not a person in Grandmaster Physics. He only knows the so-called electric field, electromagnetic force and other terms, and he does not know a deeper understanding. But anyway, the scientists in the pirate world have a high level of knowledge, so they must be able to provide some help in teaching Yamato this knowledge. And Yamato, who was teasing Nami with Maria and others, didn't know that Moda had given her the hard work of making up lessons. Suddenly, as if he had discovered something, Yamato opened his mouth and said to Moda, "Moda, there is another ship on our right. It doesn't seem to be a pirate ship or a merchant ship." This is already a relatively proficient knowledge color. With the gradual development of radio waves, Yamato has been able to spread his knowledge color perception to 10 miles around the ship, forming a perception circle, and can roughly perceive the situation in the circle. Obviously, a fast-moving ship broke into the perception area where Yamato hadn't left. To the Sabaody archipelago, it's neither a pirate ship nor a merchant ship, it can't be a human trafficker's ship. Lafitte thought about it. Trafficker's ship, but at this point in time, Moda thought of something. The poor three sisters who went to sea. Perhaps, it would not be such a coincidence. Though thinking so in his heart, Moda looked at Lafitte. "Let's move the boat over to see what's going on. If it's a human trafficker, I'd like to see which poor unlucky people have suffered this disaster." Clear. Following Moda's order, Lafitte quickly controlled the rudder and moved in the direction indicated by Yamato after responding. Although the opponent is also accelerating, the ship's forward system is naturally different, not to mention the current propulsion used by Yamato. Not long after, a small passenger ship appeared right in front of the ship. The huge size of the ship naturally made the ship notice the target behind it. Head. A large ship appears behind, it seems to be in the same direction as us. Listening to the younger brother's call, a burly man said, "Can you see what kind of ship it is?" The young man who was watching with a telescope began to say what he saw one by one. "There are 2 men, and 5.6 children and many women. And all of them have very good looks and figures. Some children seem to have some rare breeds with horns on their heads." The young man on the sidelines became more and more excited. He turned to the burly man and said, "And there is no flag on the boat. One of the 2 men looks like a steward, and the other has no weapon on him. He should be a traveling nobleman." Noble. The burly man thought about it. With such a huge ship, the other party might be a very powerful nobleman. It seemed that it would not be easy to offend. Although they are human traffickers who make a living, they also know what can and cannot be touched. Seeing the boss's hesitation, the young man who waited and watched hurriedly spoke up again, but he was drawn to great greed by the resources on that ship. "Boss, there is no hesitation. The Sabaody archipelago is in front of us. Haven't we inquired about it? There will be celestial dragons coming in this auction. With the rare items in our hands and the opposite side, we will definitely make a lot of money. At that time, we can use the chaotic area of the Sabaody archipelago to leave. If the other party pursues it after the fact, it is just a nobleman's status, and they will definitely be afraid because of the celestial dragon's status." It has to be said that because of greed, what the young man said was indeed very reasonable. After hearing this, the leader of the human traffickers turned his attention to the cabin, where their loot was imprisoned, Amazon lilies fighting women. This is a fighting nation exclusive to Calm Belt, and its rarity is very high, not even worse than mermaids. How much? It is indeed a variety that can attract celestial dragons. Combined with what his subordinates said is indeed feasible, the greed in the heart of the trafficker leader has also begun to be drawn up. He looked at the ships that were getting closer and closer, and began to signal in his hand to make the younger brothers get ready. Immediately afterwards, his eyes widened in astonishment. A man who seemed to be holding a cane in his hand, who looked like a housekeeper, suddenly jumped high on the ship, and then in midair he spread his huge white wings and flew towards them. Take the initiative to attack. Far more than that, behind the white wings, an unusually dazzling white lightning flashed at the same time. Boa Hancock. Some time ago, she and her 2 younger sisters, Boa Sandersonia and Boa Marigold, sneaked out of the daughter country Amazon Lily in the 9 Snake Pirates, in order to prove that they can also go to sea to fight. It's just that they didn't expect that the sea in today's era is more vicious and despicable than they expected. Before even encountering the desired battle, just shortly after leaving Calm Belt, the 3 sisters were kidnapped directly from the ship without anyone noticing. Here is the notorious human trafficker ship in the world. Although they do not usually touch the open sea, the 3 women know the tragic fate that awaits them. These days, she has seen the so-called men terror on the 9 Snakes. There were other women in the slave room, but since she was captured by the human traffickers on the ship and thrown back with injuries, the most direct the difference is the dead silence that no longer shines in the eyes. This continued to happen for a few days, and then slowly the numbers began to dwindle until there were only 3 of them left. Because they were important items, they escaped this catastrophe, but they also knew from those women that as long as they were taken to the auction house, it would be a matter of time. Just like what the human traffickers on the ship said, they will become auction items, be bought at the auction, live a brutal life of slavery, and may even be targeted by the celestial dragons, and be marked as slaves with a lifetime of shame. Just thinking about this and hearing this, Hancock wanted to cry out in horror, but because the 2 younger sisters were by his side, he could only pretend to be the eldest sister, and hugged the 2 younger sisters beside him tightly, give them a psychological support. But apart from psychological comfort, she seems to be unable to do anything. Her feet were shackled with chains, and she and her 2 younger sisters who lost the possibility of escape, what else could they do? Only resentment, remorse and fear. Boom. At this moment, there was a loud noise on the ship, followed by the ship began to shake violently. In the cell, Sandersonia and Marigold, left and right, only hugged Hancock's hands, trembling with fear. What happened? It's not that the ship just landed. Sister, I'm so scared. I don't want to be a slave. It's like the shaking of a ship docked on the shore. The 3 women who went out to sea naturally knew that there would be shaking. No, if it's just docked, it won't shake so violently. Hancock also trembled violently, but he still comforted him and said, it's also possible that everyone from the 9 snakes came to rescue us. As soon as these words were finished, there was a shrill and tragic cry from outside the slave room. The source of this sound was no stranger to the 3 women who had been on this ship for many days. Obviously, there was a battle outside, and the violent collision just now was caused by the battle, and listening to the sound, it was the traffickers who fell into the disadvantage. Sandersonia's and Marigold's eyes lit up immediately, obviously thinking that it was the situation that the eldest sister said. Zila. It was the sound of electric current running at high speed. In the dark door of the slave room, a flash of light could be seen. Immediately after that, there was a fierce crackling sound, and the screaming outside stopped immediately. No, this is not everyone from the 9 snakes. The excitement that rose in Hancock's heart was suppressed immediately. That was not the fighting ability he should have in his memory, and he had never heard the 9 snakes shouting to them. It was this ship that was being targeted by others. Sure enough, shortly after this idea was born, the door of the prison cell was broken open, and a man in a uniform appeared at the door, holding a strong man covered in blood in his hand. The miserable-looking man, known to the 3 women, is the boss of the human traffickers on this ship. That is to say, is it the man in front of him who has dealt with all the human traffickers on the ship? Looks like this is here. The 3 of you are what he said, the fighting nation from the Amazon Lily. Although Lafitte was asking, he used a very confirming tone. Throwing the leader of the traffickers away, Lafitte lightly tapped the shackles on the girls with a crutch, and with a click, the locks made of fine iron broke immediately. The 3 girls had been freed from the long-term shackles that had lasted for several days, but they hadn't been completely free yet. After listening to the deal, Lafitte gave up the position at the door and said, just in time, our Admiral Moda is more interested in the abducted people on this ship, so please come with me. Of course, please don't resist, otherwise I will take some coercive measures. The words of request are the tone of command. Hancock looked at the bloody head of the trafficker leader who seemed to be dead, gritted his teeth and led the 2 younger sisters towards the door. At the same time, I kept conveying comforting ideas to my heart. Anyway, they were already in the worst situation before, and now it seems that there may be other possibilities. This kind of thinking made Hancock have the courage to take a step forward, but he was still very nervous in his heart. He only hoped that he would not just leave the wolf's den and enter the tiger's den. Walking out of the cell, it should be that they hadn't seen the sky and ocean outside for more than a week, and they were a little lost before Hancock moved his eyes to the deck. Immediately, as I thought before, all the traffickers on the boat fell down. There was also thick white smoke coming out of the body due to the high temperature, and from time to time there was a burning smell that made people feel uncomfortable. In the middle of the deck, there was a girl with dazzling electric lights all over her body, and her hair was as blue and white as lightning. She seemed to be about the same age as herself. Reading this, Hancock was taken aback. She didn't think she was capable of dealing with all the traffickers on board. But looking at the situation, there is no doubt that the environment on the deck is caused by this girl. Is it demon fruit power? And it seems to be a very powerful ability. Immediately afterwards, he thought that this girl alone could easily suppress the three of them, let alone a man whose strength seemed unfathomable behind him. Sure enough, even if the shackles on the chains were lifted, they were still fish and meat at the mercy of others. Thinking this way, a huge shadow began to appear behind the ship. Because the sun was also behind, the light on the ship was gradually swallowed up by the approaching distance of the other party. The three Bo-Ya sisters looked back and saw that it was a huge ship several times larger than the ship below them. Before thinking about it for a long time, the man next to him spread his huge white wings, and then he mentioned the three sisters and returned to the approaching ship. In a very gentlemanly manner, Lafitte put Bo-Ya's three daughters safely on the deck, and did not do anything else. So, after landing, Hancock once again held the hands of the sisters beside him in his arms, and looked around cautiously and vigilantly at the same time. A group of beautiful maids, including children, big and small, and a black-haired man in the center of the ship. Although there is nothing unusual in appearance, it can be seen that everyone here is standing around him. Even the frightening, white-haired girl who can emit thunder is beside her with a face of intimacy at this time. Is he the core figure of this ship, the Admiral Moda that the man mentioned just now? Hancock looked at it in his heart, and he didn't look like a bad person like those human traffickers. Obviously, the Amazon Lily is a terrible creature that regards men as rude and barbaric, and Hancock doesn't know why he gave birth to such a basis. It may be the surrounding environment, which does not seem like the atmosphere of a bad person, but more likely the terrible experience, subconsciously wanting to have a different result here. Looking at the three pitiful Boya sisters standing together, Moda said in his heart, and at the same time, he stepped forward and leaned over. Three poor girls who were abducted by human traffickers, can you tell me your names? Seeming a bit cramped, Hancock took the initiative to speak as the eldest sister. My name is Boa Hancock, and they are my younger sisters Boa Sandasonia and Boa Marigold. Lovely girls, don't worry, we are not the pests of the sea like human traffickers. Moda smiled kindly to cover his breath. The three Bo-Ya sisters couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when they heard this. After all, it is only when they say these words from each other that people feel at ease. The kind tone of the other party, the behavior of helping them get out of trouble, and the fact that they may be the only reliance to return home at this moment, Moda's status in Hancock's heart suddenly rose. Not only the senses have changed, but also the idea of striking while the iron is hot, Hancock said with a hopeful expression. We came from the Amazon Lily, please help us return home. Please help us, this is a kindness that we will remember forever. Seeing this, the two sisters beside Hancock also prayed. Seeing this, many girls on board also showed sympathy. The experience of human traffickers can indeed make them feel empathy for those who also have a rough fate. But even though kindness arose, no one asked for them, not even Maria, who had the greatest maternal love. This is the subconscious psychology that needs to be formed as Moda's subordinates. No matter how good or evil one thinks in one's heart, all actions are based on Moda's thoughts. A kindness that will be remembered forever. I agree to your request. Moda smiled. Coincidentally, after meeting these three sisters, Amazon Lily, he wanted to make a special trip there for his own purpose. Sandersonia and Marigold, who didn't know Moda's purpose, thought that their request was successful, and immediately said with joy and gratitude, Really? Thank you so much, Modine. Hancock also bowed deeply to Moda, showing the deepest gratitude etiquette she had learned. Thank you very much for your kindness. Maria. Moda nodded, and then ordered the girl from Shangjian. Let the geisha take them to deal with it first. They have been imprisoned for so long, and they have to be clear about it. Hancock immediately remembered that he hadn't washed for more than a week, and he was still like this in front of his benefactor. He blushed so much that he didn't dare to smell the smell from his body, and obediently followed the girl named Maria to the cabin. Walk inside. Seeing this, Moda smiled. With this sense of disobedience, who can connect the cowardly Hancock with his head bowed in front of him to the image of an empress who is too contemptuous of the city and looks up at the sky in the future. Originally, he planned to go to the Sabodi archipelago to inquire about the situation of the three Boya sisters, but he didn't expect to meet them on this sailing route, so he could go directly to Amazon Lily. Moda is not only interested in the famous world's #1 beauty, Boa Hancock, but also the fighting nations with Amazon Lily. This is a combat power that can almost be used by all soldiers in the whole country, and everyone is good at using Haki. Although Wanokuna's military strength is already quite terrifying, the increase in this level of combat power is naturally the more the better, and if you can learn more in Wanokuni with the use of high-level Haki, this country where all the people are soldiers, the increase in combat power can be imagined. What's more, conquering the daughter country is also a concrete realization of some kind of fantasy one once had. As for the three Boya sisters, saving them after going through the torment in the original book is a way to improve their own image, maximize their acceptance, and gain matching sweet fruit. But what he wants, he doesn't want to be contaminated by others, especially the pigs in Celestial Dragons. Anyway, with his ability and means, even Tianyue who is Kozuki can succeed, not to mention Hancock who is only a child, just spend more thought and effort. The only pity is that the big rule-like function of sweet fruit, coupled with Hancock's future beauty, is indeed a top-level application, and its lethality on the battlefield can be described as not small. But it is still the price of winning the three Boya sisters first. Anyway, even without the fruit gain, Hancock's talent and potential are well known. The owner of Conqueror's Haki is still the one who climbed to the top of the Amazon Lily when he was only 19 years old. Emperor. Especially for the Emperor, in the Amazon Lily, the stronger the power, the more beautiful the person is. Hancock must be the one who can become the Emperor of the daughter country, so it is more convenient for him to control the country. And now going to Amazon Lily, it is natural to transfer this country first. After bringing the Amazon Lily to Wanokuni, and then using Hancock's right to speak after becoming the Emperor, he slowly and subtly made the Amazon Lily a part of Wanokuni. As for Sabaody Archipelago, Moda doesn't have much interest right now. The only important thing is to owe the amount to Shaki, and compared to this, the matter of Amazon Lily is naturally higher. So Moda also asked Lafitte to control a white gull and transport Bailey to the tavern. Anyway, the people didn't arrive, and the money arrived. It could be the same for Genshi. After cleaning and changing into the spare costumes of geishas, Sandersonia and Marigold were taken to the room to rest because of the successive fear and joy, exhausted and mentally exhausted. Hancock is also in the same situation, but he still cheers up and wants to thank his benefactor for their rescued state. The location of Amazon Lily is located on a small island in Calm Belt. There are no specific coordinates, so it is difficult for people to know. The three Boya sisters do not know the exact location. However, Moda remembers the approximate map position, which can also narrow down the flight path, which greatly facilitates the search process, and also has the bonus of a wide field of view in the sky. During the period, Hancock was still worried about the problem of Calm Belt. When he saw the ship flying across the sea, Hancock, who had never seen such a scene before, felt relieved, and his curiosity and sense of Tianjin improved. Not a lot. Born in Amazon Lily, Hancock is also deeply affected by this ethos. Although this is for domestic women, but now Hancock is not afraid of Moda's manhood due to special circumstances, and the ethos of worshipping the strong naturally applies to Moda. Onda. Maybe Moda doesn't know, it doesn't take much thought and effort, his status in Hancock's heart has been rising. In Calm Belt, a ship without a power system is difficult to sail long distances with the help of wind, and because it is often surrounded by huge sea kings, it becomes a natural protective barrier for the Amazon Lily, and it is also a rare item of the Amazon Lily fighting nation. Reason. This natural barrier will not have much impact on the troops of Amazon Lily going out. Because by cultivating the equipped snakes as sailing power, not only can you not care about the power, but also avoid the invasion of sea kings, and it is almost the only ship that can sail safely and unimpeded in Calm Belt. This is where the name comes from. Therefore, being able to become a member of the 9 snake pirates and sailing on the Calm Belt can be said to be the most beautiful combatants on the Amazon Lily. The yearning Hancock took his sisters to board the 9 snake ship because of his weak strength, and fell into a serious situation just after leaving Calm Belt to switch resources. At this moment, Moda was lying on the sofa chair, pretending to be interested in the Amazon Lily. In order to repay Moda's kindness, Hancock did not hide anything, and told what he knew. From the surrounding and internal situation of 9 Snake Island, down to some secrets about the Emperor and other events, Moda was told. Now Amazon Lily is temporarily vacant to the Emperor. Because of the previous Emperor, the Nine-Snake Pirates ship was infected with a serious and terrible disease, lovesickness, after going out to sea 2 years ago, and passed away in pain not long after. Since no one has reached the threshold of strength that the Emperor should have, the position of the Emperor has been vacated in an instant, and the previous Emperor has temporarily gone to sea due to lovesickness. Then came back alive and passed on Gloriosa, Grandma Nu, as a proxy. And when it comes to Granny Nu, I can feel the intimacy and admiration shown by Hancock. Robin, who was not training in the practice room, was listening to the story with Moda, and when he heard Hancock talking about lovesickness, he stared at him with weird eyes, especially the miraculous return of Granny Nu after overcoming the terrible illness experience. The corner of the mouth is slightly raised, as if some can't help but smile. It seems that Hancock you have great respect for that Emperor. Moda said with a smile, compared to the meaning of lovesickness, compared with the memory, only he thinks this is more interesting. The future Hancock will not hesitate to kick him out of the palace. When I strayed into a dangerous forest and passed out, she took me back and took good care of me and my sisters, Hancock explained. It was like rescuing her from a crisis, just like Moda, but compared to this experience, Moda's kindness was greater in that experience, and even Granny Nu took care of her for many years. At the height of their hearts, the two were almost at the same level. Hearing Hancock's answer, Moda thought of a situation. Maybe in a crisis, Conqueror's hockey subconsciously broke out, felt by Granny Nu, and there was a follow-up situation. From this point of view, it is also understandable why the Nine-Snake Emperor has not been succeeded to the throne in the past few years. It may not be because of lack of strength, but because the Emperor has been appointed by Grandma Niu. After reading this, Moda looked at the girl. Hancock, do you have any ideas about the Emperor of Nine-Snake Island? Or, do you want to be the Snake Emperor? Think. Without any hesitation, Hancock replied decisively. This is an inevitable problem. With the vacancy of the Amazon Lily Emperor, most of the people who admire strength want to be the most beautiful person. This is the case for Hancock, especially with the qualification of Conqueror's hockey. He is more interested in this position than ordinary people. Idea. Ambition is a good thing. Moda nodded with satisfaction. Hancock, you have the qualifications of a king, and I look forward to the day when you grow up to be an emperor. Hearing this, Hancock felt a great satisfaction in her heart after being recognized, but she didn't know what Moda expected. Proud in front of outsiders, but obedient in front of herself, how could Moda not expect such a future empress? In less than a day, starting from the sea area near Sabodi, according to the approximate distance, the flying ship was able to see the daughter island in Calm Belt, Amazon Lily. However, in the form of air, the 9-snake sign gate that blocks outsiders cannot prevent Moda and others from descending into the Amazon Lily at this time. After the shadow covered the island, the ship appeared above the island, and was immediately spotted by the residents on the island. Ignoring any intentions of the other party, only treating them as the most direct invaders, the soldiers on the island immediately prepared all their weapons. Shesh. Without any hesitation, a large number of arrows entwined with armament hockey, like a storm, shot up from the island below, blasting straight like a ship. The next moment, a white figure jumped out of the boat, turned into a violent and intertwined thunder in midair and slammed into hundreds of hockey talismans abruptly. Boom. There was a violent roar of thunder, and under the dazzling blue and white flash, the arrows turned into gray scorched debris and fell back to the island. More than one ability user. Damn it, keep attacking. The 9 snakes, who had experience in going to sea, immediately shouted loudly. Under the order of the soldiers, the next round of attack is ready again. The arrows, facing the approaching ships, just wait for an order, and the bows and arrows of the torrential rain will strike again. Everyone stop. An old voice sounded in the island. The familiar voice immediately made the soldiers stop their bows and arrows, because the person who made the sound was the acting emperor of the island, Gloriosa. Master Gloriosa. The female warriors shouted in confusion. The other party is an intruder. Why should they stop attacking? Can't you feel it? These attacks are useless at all. Gloriosa looked at the ship that was slowly descending from the sky. Besides, the opponent is not something we can fight against, so we might as well conserve our strength first. See what the opponent's intention is. Because of the isolated environment of Amazon Lily, Gloriosa cherishes and pays close attention to news from overseas sources. This was news almost a year ago, but Gloriosa remembered it very clearly. Inheriting the once legendary pirate Golden Lion, a new era flying admiral who can make everything float in the air. On the calm Belt Island sheltered by the Sea Kings, sailing in the form of flying, Gloriosa is the most worried person from the perspective of Amazon Lily. Did not expect. Now I am really afraid of anything, so I will come. Looking at the figure of the flying ship gradually enlarged due to the landing, Gloriosa's expression also became disturbed. The top-level fruit ability of the flying admiral can cause unbearable horror disasters on any island. Grandma knew. Everyone. At this moment, a loud shout came from the ship, bringing the nervous Gloriosa back to her senses. It's Hancock and the others. It can be said that among the people present, Gloriosa, who is most familiar with the voices of the three Boya sisters, opened her eyes wide and looked towards the source of the voices, only to see three little girls on the fence of the ship. The head was desperately waving downwards and shouted. Although not as fast as Gloriosa, the others also noticed the three women who were shouting, and immediately dropped their guard action by 3 points, but after noticing the presence of a man, they increased by 5 points. It's just that because of Gloriosa's order, he didn't follow the 3-2-3 attack posture. When the ship floated completely to the level of the U-shaped port, the three Boya sisters jumped from the deck and ran towards the crowd with tears in their eyes. Where did you guys go, Hancock? Do you know that I have been looking for you for many days, old man? Gloriosa rushed to meet him. We were abducted by human traffickers when we were traveling with the 9 snakes. Marie Groot and Sandersonia burst into tears after finally seeing their relatives. Hancock also wiped his tears lightly, but he was still thinking about the adult behind him. If we hadn't met Lord Moda on the way, we might never come back. Hearing this, the 9 snake warriors comforted the 3 sisters one after another, and they were also grateful for this. It's good to be back, it's good to be back. Gloriosa's tears were shining. For this matter, she even thought about going back to Sabodi Archipelago for a while, and asked her former heir Shaki for help. Fortunately, the 3 sisters are back now. After wiping away tears with sobs, something important in his heart was settled. He was relieved, and turned his head to look at Moda and the others on the fleet. Although there were some minor changes, there was no doubt that they were indeed the ones on the reward list. Face. After calming down, Gloriosa held the snake staff and said, I am Gloriosa, the XX Emperor of Amazon Lily. I am very grateful to the famous and elected Admiral of the Sky for sending my precious people back. As he spoke, he bowed deeply to Moda to thank Moda without holding on to his identity as the Emperor in the past. My citizens thought they were invaders before, so I asked the great flying admiral to forget the unpleasant scene before. He speaks good words and behaves politely. If one ignores the surrounding female warriors who are still fully equipped with weapons, it is indeed impossible to regard her as the emperor of a pirate country. And if it weren't for Moda's special situation, Gloriosa would have just thanked him and sent him away. The so-called remuneration probably means ignoring their rashness in entering the country. It is also because Moda is different from ordinary people. The current practice is just to lead the previous development to a friendly situation. Although his strength has declined due to old age, Gloriosa still maintains the wisdom, strategy and foresight of the previous rulers, especially the experience that has grown during the years of going to sea. The other party's painstaking efforts to send the 3 Boya sisters back to Amazon Lily must be for their purpose, and the only thing that can make the other party fancy is this pirate country. Coupled with the ability of the other party to have the Golden Lion, it is likely that they want to make this island fortress a part of their flying kingdom. On major events, she did have foresight. Gloriosa guessed Moda's mind to some extent, but before Moda expressed her intention to come, she would not directly talk about the topic, because it was undoubtedly an advance show of weakness. Of course, there will be a pleasant relationship between us. Regarding Gloriosa's various thoughts, Moda laughed and said, in addition to sending their sisters back, the result is actually as you think, and my purpose is to come here. You. Shocked as if her mind had been seen through, Gloriosa cried out in surprise, looking at that smile, as if thinking of something, her body trembled suddenly. During her experience of going out to sea, she also had some knowledge about the color of knowledge. Some people have cultivated the color of knowledge to the ultimate level. They can perceive people's emotions, listen to people's hearts, read people's memories, and even meet people for a short time. The future, and the condition of hearing the voices of all things. And instead of seeing the future, listen to everything. The strategic Gloriosa is more afraid of the power to listen to the heart and read people's memories. Responding to Gloriosa's thoughts, Moda said exactly what the other party was afraid of. My sense of knowledge has indeed reached that level, so, just me. I want to have a chat with you, the ruler of Amazon Lily. Related matters. Moda jumped off the ship and boarded the land in the port uninvited. Although he has already controlled the ship to arrive at the port of Daughter Country, there has been an iron law that no man has landed on the island for hundreds of years. Immediately, a woman with a fiery temper yelled, "Men are never allowed to go to the island. Leave quickly, or we will not welcome you." This is what a pirate country should look like, especially the 9 snake warriors who remember the integrity of the island. They will not have such a good relationship just because Moda brought back the abducted Hancock 3 daughters. Moda, who knows this, acts like this, just to create such a situation. The most effective way to deal with these fighting nations who value strength is of course to use stronger strength to deter them. Besides, good words and good deeds are of no use. Immediately afterwards, as if in answer, he raised his hand slightly. The ground began to tremble violently, and the angle of view began to change upwards, causing the 9 snakes present to notice in astonishment that the country they were in began to break away from common sense, slowly got rid of the traction of the sea, and floated into the air. "Are you doing the trick?" The woman who had snapped earlier couldn't help raising her weapon. Looking at Moda, the terrifying coercion came along with the trend, and it was difficult to resist, just like the pressure of facing a mountain, sweeping across the whole country. Under Moda's control, it didn't cause anyone to be unconscious, but it directly disintegrated the fighting spirit in everyone's heart. The woman even fell to the ground in horror, as if facing the abyss, her whole body began to tremble violently. Seeing this, Gloriosa had no choice but to come forward, pretending to be cold, and shouted, "Enough. I told you before going first, he is not something you can offend. Are you trying to harm the entire country?" After speaking, facing Moda, the aura of the person in power rose and immediately fell to, and he was already muttering in his heart. Such unscrupulous release of Conqueror's haki is really hard to see on the surface, but inside he is a messy man, and such a man is often not a good stubble, especially with the enchanted fruit. Having seen the behavior of Golden Lion throwing the island, Gloriosa is also well aware of the current situation of the country. For lion fruit, it only takes a small thought to make the entire island fall from a high altitude and completely destroy it. Knowing that this test is inevitable, Gloriosa began to take the initiative to lead Moda towards the palace. "Please come with me, this is not suitable for talking about that." "Sure." Moda snapped his fingers, and the rising island stopped, but did not return to the surface of the sea. Obviously, the element of threat still existed. Looking at the backs of the 2 leaving one after the other, Hancock gritted his teeth, but quietly followed behind. "It's a bit crude, I hope Admiral Moda doesn't care." In the palace, Gloriosa brought Moda to a relatively remote room. Although Gloriosa now has the power to represent the country, she once abandoned the country in pursuit of love, which made her unable to use all the facilities in the palace with peace of mind. The reason why he agreed to act as an agent was to help Hancock take care of all the affairs of Amazon Lily before Hancock grew up, and to pass the intact 9 Snake Island to the next emperor safely. But this idea is now broken. Modella stepped over a stool and sat down. "So to make a long story short, I can read everything you think in your heart anyway." Moda also ignored Gloriosa, whose complexion sank again because of this sentence, and continued, "Amazon Lily will join my country, and you can rest assured that those inheritances you are worried about will not. It's in your hands. Amazon Lily can keep the name of your island, and you can also continue to maintain autonomy. Regarding any government affairs of your country, the forces under my control will not interfere too much, and you can enjoy the support of funds and materials from my country, without excessive a dangerous life of plunder. And what you have to pay is to use it for me in terms of combat power, and to fight against the enemy. You Amazon Lily must unconditionally obey the order to go to war." The core of Amazon Lily is actually force and women, Moda is undoubtedly what this country regards as a reserve of combat power. Although it was a bit unpleasant, those promises made Gloriosa look better. Although he had no right to refuse, for the best interests of the country, he still had to ask some key questions. I don't know if the country you are talking about has already been formed, or is it being formed? Gloriosa asked. The difference between these two is quite big. It's not the country I formed. It should be said that I have obtained the control of a country. Of course, it is by reasonable and legal means. Moda was lying on his body. He knew what the other party was worried about, so he began to talk freely. The country I control now is Wano, one of the most powerful countries in the New World. Illegal countries that are still very rich in reserves, whether it is profit or production, will not have any problems driving several large countries, let alone this developing country with a population of no more than 6 figures. Wano, it's that country. Gloriosa showed surprise. But since it's Wano, it shouldn't be necessary to add our country's troops. The other party also seemed to know something about Wano. Moda then smiled and said, "Oh? It seems that you still know something about Wano, which is really rare. Is it the experience of running away to pursue love before abandoning the emperor?" Being told that she was the emperor's biggest flaw in this life, Gloriosa blushed and said, "There are some things that I have been ashamed to say for the rest of my life, and I ask Admiral Moda not to listen to these things with sensibility. And the things about Wano, I learned about it from one of my Grandmaster Intelligence juniors." That junior, Moda already has a corresponding image in his mind. And speaking of it, Shiki was also the former emperor of Amazon Lily, and he was surprised when he heard this information. But it can also explain why Shiki has such a friendship with Gloriosa, and is willing to let Rayleigh help Hancock and the others. After waving his hand, the topic returned to the right track. Moda answered Gloriosa's doubts. Wanakuna's strength is indeed very strong, but that's only limited to defense, and it's a different concept from offense. And you don't have to deliberately lower the strength of 9 snakes. Almost all members are good at 2-color hockey. Even if the number is small, no one will despise them on the battlefield. And I am very optimistic about that girl Hancock. She has talent and is destined to become one of the top powerhouses in the sea. I am keen on such geniuses. Besides, you also know that sometimes a strong man in the sea can represent a lot of troops. Gloriosa nodded. Of course she knew. This is what the Japanese said. So, Amazon Lily has joined Wano under my control, and I will spare no effort to train Hancock to make her the strongest emperor ever in your country. This also speaks to Gloriosa's heart. The stronger the emperor, the stronger the 9 snakes. This is the situation in their country. Although there are not many Moda incidents recorded in the newspaper, she can still see that the opponent's strength is not ordinary. In addition, Moda attaches so much importance to Hancock, so that after Hancock becomes emperor, the country can live better. I understand. I will make a national announcement that Amazon Lily will join Admiral Moda in your Wano and move out of Com Belt. Gloriosa took a deep breath, made a decision, and said again when she got up. But there is one more thing. I hope Admiral Moda can agree. The dignity of Amazon Lily cannot be lost. Knowing what decency is, Moda did not refuse, and nodded as an answer. Amazon Lily will serve as Wanakuna's supernumerary zone, and Wano men will not land in the daughter country without permission. In order to make this country more obedient, this request is naturally no problem. Anyway, after Hancock becomes emperor, this country will be slowly infiltrated by him. It was already an inevitable fact, but it just made everything more reasonable. After the conversation, the two left one after another, but they didn't notice the girl who hid aside and eavesdropped in the hidden corner. Of course, one really didn't find it, and the other pretended not to find it. Because of Gloriosa, she also knows some other ways to get here. But I didn't think of it. The girl's face was blushing, and her hands were tightly clenched. She heard the reason why Granny New left the country, and also heard that the adult still valued herself so much to the extent that she recognized it. The inexplicable throbbing in her heart made her feel dizzy. Originally, Hancock was worried that her benefactor would have bad relations with the country she loved, but now she heard that she would join Moda's forces, but she was very happy in her heart. Of course, the happiness of a young girl is indescribable among other people. Master Gloriosa, are you serious? Are we really going to join the country that man said? What if it is false? That's right. How can men easily listen to, who knows what disgusting purpose they have? Compared with other citizens who have listened to Gloriosa's words, the 9 snakes, who have only been to sea, still hold great opinions. Based on my decades of experience, I can still judge whether those words are true or not, and as I said, our change is only from relying on the calm belt to relying on a stronger country. There is another point that she did not explain, that is, Moda valued and cultivated Hancock, and it is not suitable to say it when the emperor is not stable. What's more, from the very beginning, when Moda appeared in Amazon Lily, they had lost the right to refuse. Of course, Gloriosa knew that these things could not be stated clearly, so as not to disturb the public opinion and cause dissatisfaction with that person, so she continued to explain with reasonable words. And the calm belt is no longer as safe as we thought. I heard reliable news recently that Marine is already developing a warship that can evade the Sea Kings, if it succeeds. This barrier is completely ineffective. So instead of waiting for Marine's future crusade, it is better to join the opponent's mouth. It is also an illegal country outside the world government, and it has a strong strength based on the New World. Even if it's bad, isn't the state of our floating sky island today safer than Calm Belt? I'm not thinking about it for myself, but for the whole country. After these words, the soldiers of the 9 snakes immediately fell silent. In the end, speaking with Gloriosa's fame and reason, the whole country accepted the truth. There is no need to go through the Fishmen Island to reach the New World. The ships and islands suspended at a height of thousands of miles crossed the barrier of the Red Line and came to the second half of the Grand Line, where the powerful gather in the lair of monsters. Now, Moda will return to this New World sea area with the harvest of nearly half a year. Although most of the elements resisted and rejected at the beginning, in less than 3 days, the 9 snakes in the Amazon Lily have generally accepted the fact that they are attached to Wano. On the basis of accepting this fact and conforming to the relatively simple folk customs, the anxious situation between the two sides has been able to develop in a peaceful and even friendly direction. On the second day like this, Yamato formed a gang and took a group of girls to Amazon Lily for fun. An island that is as isolated from the world as Wano, because Yamato tells some stories about Wano and even after going to sea, and Robin Maria's male intellectual girls who popularize science from time to time are very popular among the 9 snake citizens in recent days. During the period, because the girls adored Moda very much, all kinds of chain reactions followed. The fact that Moda is General Wano has been confirmed, and with his strong, considerate, gentle, and high-scoring impressions, etc., it has also taken root in the hearts of the 9 snakes. The influence is so great that the citizens of 9 Snakes Island began to recognize Moda as beautiful, and even the members of 9 Snakes who know the most about men are the same. If the country had not attached itself to Moda, Gloriosa would have dealt with those remarks. This is to add points to the man's impression, but she understands that Moda's personality is somewhat bad. How could he be as good as those little girls said? Moreover, the minds of her subjects are all very simple and simple. Gloriosa is very afraid that if there is an extra outstanding male and human impression in the country, it will lead to the birth of the terrible disease lovesickness. She still remembers how painful that kind of pain is. Although lovesickness really happened, the situation of being attached to Wano can be cured immediately, but it is better not to happen if it does not happen. Moda didn't know the worries in Gloriosa's heart at this time, but if that happened, he would naturally be happy to see the results. Now that Amazon Lily has landed, Moda didn't pay much attention to it except that the girls had a great time there. Let Lafitte act as the navigator and pay attention to the direction of the destination. Moda spends most of his time every day recently, on an island that has been enlarged by using the Momo fruit and Koshiro. Solidify the feeling of sword intent. After mastering the Conqueror's entanglement, after being fully familiar with the level of transcending swordsman, Moda has the ability even if the fruit has not yet awakened. Like those monsters, he has the ability to make troubles in New World. At the same time, it is also time to build up his reputation in the New World to facilitate other more ambitious plans. Just like in the New World, there are certain powers and happiness that only the strong deserve to enjoy. When passing through the Fishman Island, Lafitte asked Moda why he didn't make the Fishman Island a part of Wano. You must know that the Fishman Island has Poseidon, an ancient weapon, and Moda's ambition, it is impossible not to grasp it thoroughly after learning about it. At that time, for Lafitte, Moda responded with the reason of lack of fame. The Fishmen Island is a member country of world government, not a small fortress country like Amazon Lily. Although because of the celestial dragons, it is still a country that is squeezed out and oppressed, and can only survive below 10,000 meters under the sea, but compared to Moda, who is not famous enough in the world, even with Wano, it is difficult to convince him sincerely take refuge in Moda's command. Of course, it's only now, and the future is hard to say. After all, the other party will suffer severely because of a murloc in the future. Besides, Shirahoshi has not yet come to this world, and there is no rush to plan everything related to the Fishmen Island. Anyway, no matter how bad it is, with Shirahoshi alone, Moda is still in his hands. As for the Fishmen Island, it has the function of developing seabed resources and forming an underwater army, but with Shirahoshi, Moda will have ideas, but will not force them. In this way, time was on the voyage, and almost another week passed. The second half of the Grand Line is already on the way to New World. Boom. When the bubbles met the air, they exploded with a dull sound of bubbles, and immediately a large thunderclap sounded, and hailstones like a shower began to appear in the air, smashing towards the sponge, causing layers of spray. This is the most common form of New World changeable weather. Although relying on fluttering to keep ships and islands from being affected by it, this kind of change of hailstorm 1 second before the sun and 1 second after that is still an eye-opener for everyone who has experienced New World for the first time. The little guys on the same ship also realized that the sea is not all smooth and calm, especially this Grand Line Zhongyi. Moda held the pointer, and according to the map, the punk hazard closest to this sea area was not far ahead. Now that we have returned to New World, the last task of returning to Wano is to go to Punk Hazard, which is also on the New World Island, to fully implement the artificial fruit plan. At the same time, take away the scientific troops by the way, improve the technological development of Wano. In less than a moment, at the flying speed, you can already see the destination marked by the pointer, Punk Hazard. At this time, Punk Hazard is not Ice and Fire Island, nor has it become an uninhabited island after a scientific weapon explosion accident. The island at this time is still one of the 3 major marine research bases, and it belongs to the area under the jurisdiction of the government. Punk Hazard is one of the 3 research bases of marine scientists. At the same time, it is also an island that specializes in the research and development of weapons of mass destruction, headed by Guy Sakran. It is precisely because of the high level of this double-edged sword that although Gaisa is the second member of the science team under Vegapunk, he is on the verge of being used and discarded by the world government. Even this island does not have the same degree of resource protection as Vegapunk, which is protected by Admiral. Moda flew the boat over the island, and the perception range of Yamato's radio waves equipped with armed colors spread to almost the entire island. As soon as Yamato sensed and reported all the internal situation, and even the personnel, according to the general characteristics of the characters, and confirmed that there was no strong opponent, Moda lost interest, so he did not intend to let the team attack together, and simply completed it quickly. The purpose of this time. After ordering everyone to wait on the boat, Moda jumped from the height of the bow, and in the howling wind, steadily rushed towards the research room of the Punk Hazard Center. Although with his ability, it is easy to avoid the so-called marine and phone bugs, or Yamato's electric field can block all external signals. But on the one hand, it is really troublesome to sneak around like this, and on the other hand, he also has the purpose of using this to create momentum. Call out. Moda landed steadily on the ground without any cover, and was immediately surrounded by Marines. This is the island of the world government. Anyone who trespasses here without authorization is a serious crime. Take him down for me. Without giving Moda any chance to explain, one Marine spoke, and then the other Marines immediately pressed forward with guns. Before Marine pressed forward, Moda had already taken the first step to control the ground attached by the ability. Boom. A huge tremor came from the island, pressing on the Marines who came forward, and several of them lost their balance and fell to the ground. What is this situation? Earthquake-induced fluctuations. Moda responded with a slight smile and raised his hands. A violent sense of rising was immediately transmitted from the island to the Marine present. Soon they discovered that the previous noise was not the tremor caused by the earthquake, but caused by the island breaking out of the sea. Island, fly up. This ability is Lion Fruit. He is the new era flying Admiral Moda. Damn it. It's an enemy attack. Call Vice Admiral in the headquarters for support. All of a sudden, Marine was in a mess, and the troops who had pressed down earlier retreated in panic. The Marine who did not stop the contact dealt with these Marine soldiers who were not generals. Moda waved his fingers casually a few times. The land on the ground has turned into a tsunami-like soil flow, which ferociously engulfed all the Marines present. After solving the Marine troops guarding the site, Moda Fang put his hand on the research institute. Lifting his hand again, the entire soil near the research institute was lifted up by an invisible force, and countless gravels were split open, separated from Punk Hazard with a bang, and flew up alone. It just so happens that there are scientific troops inside, and the various instruments and equipment inside are also very good. It would be convenient to simply take the entire scientific research institute here, and move directly. After the research institute was separated, a startled roar came from behind. Although it is the island of the research force, it is the same as it is perceived. At this moment, there is only one vice admiral in charge of guarding the island. Sure enough, when Moda turned his head, the figure with the general's cloak was already using the 6 styles to attack him quickly. If it was interesting before, Moda at the moment doesn't intend to pay attention to the angry vice admiral in front of him. The palm hangs down, and when it does not touch the ground, the additional Lion Fruit ability retracts. The Piao Piao ability blessed by the entire island suddenly failed, and the momentary inertia caused short-term stagnation in the air everywhere on the island, and then suddenly fell towards the sea. Damn. Vice Admiral roared and used Moonwalk to maintain his figure, but he rushed towards the falling island more wisely than chasing Moda. Whoosh. Boom. The rapidly falling island hits the sea level. Even if it only flies at a height of tens of meters, the impact brought by the huge island and the kinetic energy will definitely set off a 100-meter-high sea wave, which will collide with many warships docked nearby. It flew up, and some of them directly turned into wrecks and sank to the bottom of the sea. This kind of combat is only the most basic ability of Lion Fruit, which can be seen at the strategic level. Seeing that half of Punk Hazard sank to the bottom of the sea, and no longer cared whether the island would become history, Moda led the research institute to rise again until it reached an altitude of several thousand meters. It was about the same height as the ship and island he came to before walking towards the research institute. The door was not closed tightly, and as Moda stepped in, the emotions of fear and panic had already come from the front. Moda looked around, but at some point, a group of dozens of people in overalls who looked like scientists had gathered together. Scientists are not stupid, not to mention Moda's purpose is so obvious. Among the scientists, in the middle of the front, who looked like a leader, Moda recognized at a glance that it was the guy he was looking for this time. It seems that there is no need for explanation. Now tell me, what is your answer? As a deterrent, Moda's red sakura was not sheathed. At the same time, it exudes a creepy aura, and also contains the faint coercion of conquerors, which somewhat has the effect of Big Mom's soul spell. Obviously, as long as the answer is unsatisfactory, it is by no means an easy result of letting people go. Under such circumstances, the result is naturally a scene that Moda likes to hear and see. We offer allegiance to you. It seems that these scientific troops are more or less contaminated with Geisa Current's character of coveting life and fearing death. In just a few seconds after Moda spoke, a group of people expressed their surrender in unison. After Moda nodded, he suddenly drew his sword, and before everyone had time to react, several slashes landed, directly taking the lives of 8 of them. The scientists were in a mess again, and Guy even revealed that he had a flying gas fruit state, as if he wanted to escape. Moda's words followed. Don't panic. There is one thing I didn't explain to you in the previous answer, that is, I can see through a person who is lying. Moda picked up the red sakura and pointed to the dead souls under the knife. These people, obviously died for this reason. Of course, apart from the insincere words, some of them were hidden chess pieces that the world government stayed here to monitor. He didn't want to be infiltrated by people from the world government as soon as he became his own scientific research institution. Moda retracted the red sakura back into the scabbard, and stopped the panicked scientists. You are people who have passed the test, and I will naturally not do it again, So don't be afraid, and now each of you will introduce the direction you are good at. It was said that the scientists didn't know the truth of Moda's statement that Moda could see through lies, but they didn't dare to speculate too much when they saw that the other party did not hesitate to kill, so they introduced them in an orderly manner. Unsurprisingly, although there are various researches such as mechanical processing and automation, the most important thing is the research on weapons and ammunition that matches Geisa Current's ability. It is no wonder that a relatively extreme scientific research team is established in a dangerous sea area like New World, probably to facilitate the avoidance of research risks of large-scale weapons. After the explosion of scientific weapons, the entire island became an uninhabited island. Naturally, the world government can use the unique concealment of this new world to block some information first, push Guy out of the blame, and bury the world. The government's purpose for conducting these studies. After listening to the introductions of all the scientists, Moda nodded, and began to tell the follow-up results of these people. Very well. From now on, you will belong to my country, and you can still conduct research and development and experiments in this research institute, but weapons of mass destruction need to be restricted. Other than that, you don't need to worry about research fees. What you need to remember is that the service target will be transferred from world government to me. The scientists looked at each other in blank dismay, until someone spoke. I wonder what country this lord is from. The scientists are not stupid. The other party directly attacked the world government island, and they completely ignored this giant in their words, either arrogant or confident. Wano-kuni, and I am the current general of Wano-kuni. Moda replied, and the scientists immediately burst into surprise. It's that illegal country famous for its swordsmen and warriors. It seems to be a very famous and powerful country in the New World. Likewise, this group of scientists discusses most of its strengths on Wano-kuni. This is what this group of scientists are concerned about. You must know that even if they are taken away forcibly, the world government will track them down afterwards, and most of them will end badly. And if the backer is a well-known powerful country at sea, the world government's investigation will naturally change. Hey, blah blah, my lord from Wano-kuni, we will definitely devote our whole life's talents to serve you and your country. Seeing Moda's terrifying strength, Guy saw, who was half surrendered, hurried forward to take an oath after hearing Moda's background and identity. Guy Sarah Current, I know you. It might be better to say that the purpose of this trip is for you. For this reason, I just spared your life. Seeing Moda's meaningful expression, Guy immediately became terrified, and couldn't help being frightened. Could he really know that I lied earlier? Even the expression showed a surprised change of color. After he realized it, he coughed quickly, folded his hands together, and showed another flattering expression to Moda. Thank you, General, for your generosity. It is my luck to be valued by the General. Weapons, medicines. As long as adults like it, I can research it. These two are the points that Geisa is best at and specializes in. Sad is fine too. Moda said directly. Of course, no problem. Guy subconsciously said, and then shook his hands in shock. Sad? How did he know? One by one, should I tell the truth? No. If he can really see that I am lying, he will definitely become one of those dead souls. A series of words bombarded in his heart, and after the result was obtained, Guy carefully pointed his finger inside the research institute. My lord, how about we go in and talk about the matter of Sad? As he said that, the chicken thief swept around. Obviously, he has never shared this research with anyone, and he has no plans to do so. Knowing why Guy was being cautious, Moda said indifferently, what are you covering up? Isn't it the technology left by Vegapunk? I plan to let them assist in the development, and I will deal with the personnel related to the world government. Hearing what Moda said, compared with those who were disposed of, it seemed that they had been touched. Guy spread his hands and explained to Moda. That guy Vegapunk didn't leave any technology behind, at most leaving behind the idea. Guy saw, who was retorting loudly, suddenly lowered his voice, and then patted himself on the chest, pointing his thumb at himself, and said with confidence and complacency, and I relied on mere ideas, combined with my genius brain has done a lot of research on Sad. Heh heh. I got carried away, I'm so sorry. Guy saw, who had just boasted that he laughed, immediately bowed to Moda with the most humility at 90 degrees after recovering. Although he is a scumbag, he is also a famous comedian among pirates. Mingming is very apprehensive and afraid of himself in his heart. When it comes to points that are not as good as Vegapunk, he will immediately become angry. Is this the resentment of the second child of 10,000 years in Zheng Science Group? Moda felt emotional in his heart, and praised indifferently. I will be tolerant of geniuses, although not as good as Vegapunk. And you are also a famous figure in the World Government Science class, second child, so you can already make artificial devil fruit. The compliments inside and outside the words are all for the purpose of naming Moda. However, the praise is true. You must know that it will be nearly 18 years after the 2 years in the original book. Guy, who is only 21 years old now, already has such an understanding and grasp of sad. Artificial devil fruit? Really, can this kind of thing really be done? Scientists generally couldn't believe it when they heard this. The more difficult and impossible it is, the more it shows the height of Desheng's achievement. Phew. That's right. The sad I specially developed is the key element to be able to process and develop artificial devil fruit. Guy laughed with his arms akimbo. Then Guy, have you already developed the finished product of artificial fruit? It is an extremely rare product in science, and all the scientists present wanted to witness it. If I developed a finished product here, I would have been taken away by the world government long ago, and I would still be safe in an unsafe island like New World. What's more, man-made devil fruit still needs to go to the district to build a complete processing plant. After Guy cast a glance at Moda, he hurriedly said, however, as long as such conditions can be met, I'm confident that within a few years, I can achieve man-made devil fruit 50% of the time. 50% is half the possibility, which is already a very high probability for anecdotes like artificial fruits. Of course, Moda also knows what the other party didn't explain, that is the side effect of man-made devil fruit. Those who fail to eat it will be deprived of all expressions except smiles. But this is not what Moda cares about. Anyway, the buyer is Kaido, and whether the side effects are irrelevant to him, just let the beast's pirates worry about it. What's more, the man-made devil fruit is not only for Kaido of the beasts, he intends to use the reason of animals to plant unique hidden mines. In this way, relying on the ability of lion fruit, this giant research institute was easily driven by Moda, floating around the ship island and leaving the sea area together, heading straight for Wano for a few days. New World, on the speeding ship, Yamato and Maria lay on the rails of the ship, looking at the scene that is becoming more and more familiar with travel. The excitement in their hearts is somewhat unbearable. At the current sailing speed, we will be able to reach Wano in about half an hour. Lafitte, who was in charge of the navigation route, said that his eyes followed the direction of Yamato and others. Is it finally here? Whoops. A country where even the newspapers are hard to hear. What are you really looking forward to? Guy said enthusiastically that after knowing that there is a huge golden town among the islands to return to, his heart at the moment is the same as that of Hobak. Even if there is no coercion from Moda, his heart has already turned to Wano. After the announcement that Wano was approaching was passed on, almost everyone put down their busy work and looked around the island or the ship and looked below the sea surface. In about 20 minutes, the surrounding seawater slowly became agitated, vortices as large as formed, and even the sky became a little dark and gloomy. Everything seems to indicate that there is something incredible ahead of this sea area. Then, the towering land in the distance, and the huge waterfall crashing down appeared in front of everyone. What a magnificent sight this is! Lafitte couldn't help being amazed when he saw this kind of scene for the first time. Not only him, but the citizens of Nine Snakes, as well as the ships who came to Wanakuna's command for the first time, all showed their true colors. Passing through the dangerous Eddy Sea area and the Great Waterfall, at a high altitude, you can see the country at the end of the waterfall above the Special Sea. After approaching the destination, Moda lowered the ship and the island to a height of 100 meters. The flying fleet thus crossed the sky above Wano, attracting the attention of the citizens below. To be seen is the iconic Flying Sky Island and the Centurion-class ship that left half a year ago. Immediately, everywhere they passed by, violent cheers erupted. It's General Moda who's back. General Moda. General, I love you. It was an exaggerated cry that could break through the sky, and it happened every time it passed through an area. Almost everyone below raised their hands high, shaking their guns in the air with smiles and joy. Most people who come to Wano for the first time can feel the terrifying popularity of Moda in this country most directly. Although Maria and Yamato had expected it, they didn't expect it to be so terrifying. For a moment, looking at the situation of Wano below, everyone had mixed feelings in their hearts. Maria was the most excited. Although it had been more than half a year, she felt like returning home after a long absence. In this situation, Shimotsuki Koshiro was even more so, but it was not as good as the former's tear glands. Yamato was also very happy to shake his hand downwards and responded. Although the happy adventure was over, this sense of belonging of welcoming home also made her heart jump with joy. On the contrary, Robin was a little apprehensive. The country that was getting closer and closer would indicate that she was about to start her position as general manager. For a while, she couldn't help but worry about whether she could do a good job. Qiwuhai and Guy Saw, two geniuses in different fields, have already imagined in their minds that they must become famous figures in this Wano. This feeling of being cheered and worshipped by so many people must be very comfortable. In Amazon Lily, Gloriosa not only observes the lofty prestige, but also carefully observes and analyzes the structural conditions of the places it passes by. After getting the results, I sighed in my heart that it was Shiki who said that this is a self-sufficient country that can be self-sufficient even if it does not need money from the sky and cuts off the foreign economy, and none of the regions is a victim of backwardness and poverty. It seems that all countries are thriving. Especially the Flower City area in the center, it looks extremely prosperous, much higher than many core areas she has been to. It is no wonder that Moda has such a high popularity in Wano. Coupled with the source of property in the Golden Island, Gloriosa can already predict how highly developed Wano will be. From this point of view, it is really a good thing that Amazon Lily can be included in the list of such a stable and efficient country. After reading this, she looked at the three Boya sisters who were also sighing, and said to the eldest sister among the three girls, "Hancock, come with me later, we will go to General Moda and settle down on Amazon Lily of all things." Is it so sudden? Hancock suddenly twitched. Then I have to wash up first. Didn't you wash it not long ago? Looking at Hancock who suddenly accelerated away, Gloriosa couldn't help stretching out her hand and shouting. And you shouldn't care. Why should I take you to this point? He also planned to slowly reveal part of the Emperor's situation to Hancock. Seeing this, Gloriosa suddenly had an ominous premonition in his heart, and then shook his head violently, and said to himself, "No, it should be just a token of gratitude to General Moda. Love is right. But this situation, isn't it the most likely precedent to breed such dangerous feelings?" "Grandma Nu. What's wrong with you?" Gloriosa suddenly raised her head and yelled unbearably, and Sandersonia and Mariglut at the side immediately rushed forward, as did the surrounding 9 snake warriors. Back at Wano, Moda first placed the islands around the ship in the waters near Wano. The research institute is close to the island of the weapon processing factory. As a non-staff fortress, daughter country is supposed to be located some distance away from the sea. At the same time, after letting the citizens of 9 Snakes familiarize themselves with the new environment, Moda returned to the capital of flowers with the main ship. Due to the previous parade in the air, the whole Wano already knew the news of Moda's return at this time. Crowds with their hands raised in the capital of flowers gathered under the square of the general city, and the troops under the general's command were already waiting in the city. Among them, a pair of mother and daughter with light green hair stood in the front and were particularly conspicuous. The ship landed steadily on the square. Hyori had already trotted over, opened his hands and ran towards Moda, cheering, "Moda big brother, you are back." "Yo. Hyori, it's been half a year." Yamato next to Moda's eyes lit up first, and he also opened his hands, embracing the joyous Hyori. The joy of seeing a friend made the other party change from joy to resentment. Of course, Yamato, who was happy, didn't notice this. Returning to the territory he ruled, for various reasons, Moda also smiled, touched Hyori's head, and then looked at Kozuki. "Thank you, you have managed Wano for me for half a year, and everything is in order. According to your rules and regulations, you don't need to spend a lot of thought. All townships follow the orders of the general's mansion, and the management is quite easy." Kozuki shook his head while talking, wanting to report the situation of the past half year. Moda stopped him aloud. I just came back, and I'm exhausted. I'll report on these matters later, and now I just want to have a good rest. As he said that, when he looked at Kozuki, the charm and figure still remained, but he hadn't enjoyed it for more than half a year. Kozuki couldn't help looking at Moda. The other party was not in a state of fatigue at all, but saw the piercing eyes in those words, and thought of something. His face turned red, and he hurriedly said, half ashamed and half happy, "The person you brought back, you also need to make good arrangements first." Moda smiled unabated, and wrapped his arms around Kozuki. "Let Ren arrange these things first, and now is the time to build a strong character." After more than half a year of traveling, returning to China this time is indeed a rewarding return in every sense. That night, Moda, who went his own way as a general, forcibly returned to the city while pulling Kozuki. For more than half a year, when Kozuki, who had already passed the hurdle in his heart, let Moda move with half resentment and half shyness, you and me. Even in various senses, experiencing the taste of food that has never been felt before, and the bonus brought about by missing it for half a year, made Moda happy. From noon to night, until the next day, Moda began to arrange various people and things in Shinduo from his status as a general. First of all, Amazon Lily will be merged into King Wano in the form of special zone, extra combat power. Under the premise of autonomy, enjoy the same treatment as other areas of Wano, including supplies, teaching, medical care, etc. Moda also specially made a road out of the fruit to connect Girl Island to Wano. In this way, when the 9-snake army is needed, resources and travel are saved, and it is also convenient for other female volunteers and other resources of the country to arrange to enter the daughter country. With autonomy, this fortress is still a forbidden area for men. At the junction of the roads, there are huge valves that can control the rise and fall, which are used to stop men. Although Moda has ordered that most men in the whole country will not be like this, but sex is nature, especially in a fortress full of women, Gloriosa, who understands men's minds, still uses it as a means of protection just in case. But Moda has heard of it recently, and it is generally that people outside want to go in, and people inside want to come out. 9-snake citizens who are very curious about Wano, because they have never been exposed to the outside world, are very eager to visit Wano, and this has been discussed in China recently. After all, this is not a violation of the country's iron rules. The former 9-snake pirates have the right to travel and see, not to mention that the new country is outside, and there will be no risk. Of course, in Moda's default, how to operate is an internal matter of Amazon Lily. After 9-Snakes Island, it was Moda who made arrangements for the conquered retainers. Lafitte, who has the ability of phantom beasts. Ghost Fruit, Perona with extremely powerful auxiliary ability. The twin stars of future swordsmanship talent, Kuina and Zoro. Robin is talented, steals, manages, and reports top-notch abilities. They can be cultivated as navigators, and at the same time they will be the eye-catching Nami sisters in the future. These Moda were all arranged to live in the general's mansion, and were trained as quasi-imperial court fans and chief managers. Of course, there is also the future Empress Hancock, but her current arrangement is to stay in Daughter Island, and Gloriosa will train the emperor, and she will come to Moda for a few days a month. Shimotsuki Koshiro, who is not far from the great swordsman, and Moda, according to his wishes, built an Ishin gymnasium for him in the Flower City, and promoted it through dark forbearance to cultivate more samurai combat power. During the construction of the gymnasium, Koshiro began to visit the famous samurai swordsman in China to see if he could break through his bottleneck. Hobak, Moda will use its own knowledge, combined with the technology and equipment of Drum Island, to form a group of medical teams in China. As a pioneer in the development of Wano Medical. The same situation is similar to that of the scientific troops. Returning to the original research institute, in addition to giving priority to the development of SAD, other directions such as weapons and machinery can still be continued, and the direction of combining with Wano weapons and even handicrafts will be carried out to create more powerful and attractive products and enhance Wano the strength of the weapon. Of course, in medicine and science, there is an obligation to impart knowledge. Moda intends to select candidates who are good at lecturing, and to use their knowledge on a regular basis to drive the popularization and development of related cultures. Some overseas characteristic applications, facilities, and knowledge books have also begun to fill Wano as spiritual connotations. The territory that I completely control. Moda does not want to be a deformed country with powerful force, weak knowledge development. After all, Moda's current plan is to radiate to the entire sea with Wano-kuni. In the few days when Moda began to regain control of Wano-kuni's internal affairs, because of the punk hazard incident, it has accumulated for many days. At this moment, in Mariajoy of Redline, the highest conference room of the world government is discussing this topic. The news about the Flying Admiral Moda has been found out from Morgans. 5 elders with a figure-8 mustache leaned on the sofa and said with a serious expression, "That guy seems to have become the ruler of Wano-kuni without our knowledge." Both Amazon Lily and Punk Hazard's research institutes are located in that country. The letter paper in his hand was slapped heavily on the table. That is the rough information combined by the CP agency through the information, Morgans said. Although Lion Fruit's behavior is difficult to be accurate, Wano-kuni is also closed due to the country's lockup. But in the world, there are still agencies that specialize in tracking intelligence capabilities. The Newsbird's vision, the albatross-shaped Morgans, and the flight whereabouts learned by Punk Hazard can indeed track the Lion Fruit's movements at that time very well. However, because of the lack of knowledge, I can only get in touch with from afar. It wasn't until it fell back to Wano-kuni, combined with the response of the people's livelihood at that time, that Morgans knew what kind of explosive news this time would be. Of course, he didn't announce the news to the whole world immediately, because the world government bought the temporary right to release the news with a lot of money. The other 4-5 elders also reached out to take the letter paper, and with a glance at 10 lines of skills, they knew the general idea. Wano-kuni. The blonde 5 elders said, that's why Kaido's pirate group was active in other areas of New World not long ago. All 5 of them knew that not long ago Kaido was supposed to share Wano-kuni with a guy from Kurozumi. A few years ago, the world government had a certain understanding of arms sales in the dark world. Then what to do now? 5 elders, wearing a bonnet, glanced at the other 4. It's just this information that can already infer the terrifying background that the Flying Admiral possesses today. Take away Wano-kuni's power from Kaido, already one of the monsters of the sea. Coupled with its Wano-kuni military strength and background, to some extent it cannot even lose to the terrifying large flying fleet owned by the Golden Lion at that time. Looking at it this way, it is completely the legendary Golden Lion of the sea, once again facing the sea. The 5 are a little silent. Even if they are in control of the military, their temper is a little hot, and the 5 elders who holds a sword and a kimono is the same. Compared with the other 4, he knows the energy of Wano-kuni. The Wano-kuni sea area under Moda's current control is enough to make 5 elders and others fearful. Although the world government's savings are not scary, but to deal with Wano-kuni, who is now firmly in the New World, and the strong strategic ability of Moda Lion Fruit, even if it succeeds, it will have to pay a huge price. It is the same as the reason why the world government is unwilling to let Marine take the initiative to carry out a comprehensive crusade against the 2 sea emperors, Whitebeard and Big Mom. Sitting in this position is by no means a simple-minded person. On the premise of maintaining the dignity of the world government should not suffer too much loss. This is not a question of whether they can bear it, but a situation where they are allowed to some extent after they sit in this position. If Moda took away Vegapunk this time, or if the other party was the son of evil who started this era of pirates, then even if naval headquarters were to attack Wano-kuni, the 5 elders would probably make a decision after considering it for a while. Now, it's just a research island, and the scientific research force led by Guy Saw, for this purpose to fight Moda and Wano-kuni, obviously can't reach the balance that can urge action in the heart. Although Gaisa is the second person in the scientific research team, compared with Vegapunk, it is completely the difference between intellectual elites and babies, not to mention Gaisa's double-edged sword in research is also swinging between the use and abandonment of the world government. It's really not worth it for a Punk Hazard, but if it goes like this, I feel uncomfortable. After all, to some extent, this is also a challenge to the authority of the world government. Moreover, Moda must also be suppressed, otherwise judging from his whereabouts, he may use Lion Fruit more recklessly to strengthen his territory. Why don't you explain it to the Lord and use the ability of the national treasure to solve it directly and fundamentally? Stop joking. It's not yet the prophecy period, neither the existence nor the ability of the national treasure can be revealed in advance. One five elders' proposal was immediately rejected by another. Let those pirates eat dogs. Kimono five elders said in a cold voice. Charlotte Linlin, isn't she very interested in Moda? If she reveals Wanakuna's information, she will definitely care about it with her greediness. With this beginning, the heads of the other five elders also had an inspiration, and they spoke one after another. In addition to how the newspapers instigated speeches, he was portrayed as the third pirate emperor. He does not have the New World qualifications like Big Mom and Whitebeard, and it is everything that can make many pirates envy him. Pirate is such a guy, and Whitebeard's former captain of the second squad, and one of the members of the pirate group, isn't that Kozuki Odin the heir of General Wano? It can also work on this point. If the opponent uses lion fruit to escape, it will not only make Wano lose the great advantage of the terrain, but also deal a blow to Moda's influence in New World and hinder the successor of his forces. What can create trouble for the enemy is not only force, but also speech. The world government that controls the entire sea is the best at this method. In this way, the five elders gradually clarified and completed the plan step by step with each other. This is the essence of the five-person summit meeting. Soon, the plan to compete against Moda was continuously improved from the discussion, and it was only waiting for the plan to be implemented. The end of this program can also be regarded as the end of the discussion of this meeting. But before that, the blonde five elders, the advocate of the meeting, obviously had other things to say. Now, it's time for us to consider the growing power of New World monster pirates, and Moda as such a precedent. Whitebeard once owned 50% of the sea area of the rocks, and the main ship, and now has more than 30 pirate ships under his command. Charlotte Linlin is in charge of the Toto land sea area with 34 islands, establishes all nations, and has a large number of soldiers and pirates under his command. In New World, there are still many pirates pouring in from all over the world, and they are also constantly strengthening themselves or becoming accessories for top pirates. The Beast's pirates are also the beneficiaries. The level of development alone is already the embryonic form of the top pirate group at sea. Although this kind of development will gradually stabilize the second half of the Grand Line and achieve a balance of forces among all parties, it has to be said that under the development of the Great Pirate Era, this will also drastically increase the source of troops for the opponent. With this speed of development, the world government obviously underestimated the influence of the Great Pirate period. The rule of the four seas is their main source of troops. While they can get strong people and potential stocks from it, they can also immediately launch the conscription of the four seas to make up for the losses in the war. And now, because of the era of great pirates started by Luojia's words, the number of pirates has surged, and the feedback is that more and more troops from all over the world are flocking to the Grand Line. Nutrients for the overlord of the New World. For them the world government is attenuation, but for the New World Lord it is enhancement. Although the powerful pirates in New World can maintain and increase their source of gold in the sky, but if the other party develops at such a high speed, they are not what the world government wants to see. The era of the big pirate can no longer be allowed to develop unscrupulously. Marine can't achieve absolute deterrence in attack, just like the plan for Moda this time. It may be more effective to use pirates to fight pirates. You mean the Shichibukai policy? It really should be perfected. In this regard, the rest of the five elders did not have much objection. It is not too long since this policy was introduced, but in Shichibukai, there is only crocodile, which is used up. Asia and bad wine bardock. After all, only pirates who are well-known or powerful enough to frighten everyone are eligible to become Shichibukai. In the New World where the Emperor is now in power, there are very few of them. Suddenly thinking of something, the blonde five elders continued. If you say that if Moda's power is hit hard this time, what is the possibility of making him a Shichibukai? In the end, Morgans, who got first-hand information in Wano, has sent all the newsbirds to spread the whole process from Punk Hazard to Wano all over the world. Among them, according to the practice of the five elders, Moda's practice of destroying the island is specially relaxed, and at the same time, the powerful and rich of Wano are listed, and the headline of this newspaper is named, New World the Third Marine the Emperor of Thieves. A man who controls the entire Wano and possesses terrifying power. So, as a matter of course, the whole sea was stirred up again by the news of Moda. If it doesn't sing, it's a blockbuster. Moda, which has only been recorded a few times, has occupied the heavy headlines of the sea every time. Is it this guy again, to destroy an island where Vice Admiral is sitting so easily? That's an island of the world government, it's a lunatic to actually take the initiative to provoke it. It's just that I was lucky to get the fluttering ability of the Golden Lion, and I have few records in the sea, and I am worthy of being the third emperor of the sea. Are you kidding me? Ah ha ha. If he is the third emperor of the sea, then if we kill him, wouldn't we also become the third emperor? Little ones, go to Wano. Isn't that country very rich? The whole world is amazed, some for Moda, some for Wano. But in the new world, the pirates who have gone through hardships in and stood out are very dissatisfied with this so-called third sea emperor. You must know that they have escaped from Big Mom, escaped from Whitebeard, and continue to sharpen and become stronger in this new world. There are also many big pirates who can occupy one side here. Moda has hardly shown Dahai's top strength. How could it be possible for them to be willing to recognize this new title of emperor? To know New World's cakes, that's all. The government group. Naval headquarters, in the marshal's office, Zephyr was a little angry and wanted to yell, but he suppressed it, and then said angrily, "We have lost nearly half of the Marines in the branch. Now we don't send troops to attack, but we still plan to send." Did he pull in Shicibukai? As the most righteous partner in his heart, Zephyr is already dissatisfied with this policy, not to mention that Moda's front foot is causing harm to Marine, and the rear foot of the world government still intends to gather her. To become a Shichibukai is not only a reasonable pirate recognized by the government, but also has the legal right to plunder, and can write off previous cases. Sengoku, who is the marshal, also wants to greet the family members of the top 5 at this moment, but at the same time as he is in such a position and has high power, he is even more helpless with this order. Also New World, the only 2 sea emperors in the sea at this moment, also attracted great attention because of this incident. Dad. Wano, isn't that Uncle Odin's country? And according to him, shouldn't he be the heir? How did the general become this foreigner's Moda? The old crew members who had been on the ship for a while discussed this news, especially Izo, who was also a retainer of Wano and Odin, couldn't accept it. For some reason, Kozuki Odin's life paper was not left on the ship, so it is naturally impossible to know his accurate information. There has been no information about him in these years, and the familiar people on the Whitebeard ship all think that Kozuki Odin is the reason for returning to Wano to become the general. Unexpectedly, this would be the case. Sitting on the main seat on the deck of the Moby Dick at the moment, Whitebeard also looked a little ugly. It has been a long time since outsiders got on General Wano and this family member recently. He can't help but think a little too much. Send someone to investigate. If Odin is really killed by this guy, even with the ability of that old lion, Lousy will shoot him down into the sea. Like rolling thunder, under Whitebeard's angry and suppressed voice, some captains immediately took action, and Yizang was the most active among them. The third emperor of the sea, Whitebeard doesn't care about that. But the nature of the problem is different when it comes to his admitted family members. New World, Toto Land Sea Area, the core area of Emperor Charlotte Linlin, Cake Island. Wahahaha. The third emperor on the sea, is that the only guy? Isn't this me, who seems to be the same emperor, and the old guy Whitebeard? The status is very cheap. Charlotte Linlin smiled, her face turned ferocious, and she crushed the handle of the seat underneath. That guy turned down your tea party invitation, Mom. Obviously, this should have been spread for nearly a year. The Minister of Candy, Perispero, also became angry. He also didn't approve of a little brat who was younger than himself, who could sit on the position of New World Emperor. As the eldest son, it can be said that he is the most familiar with his mother's family, and his words can often capture Charlotte Linlin's thoughts most accurately. As soon as these words came out, Charlotte Linlin, who was already somewhat dissatisfied and angry, immediately became even more furious. That's right, in this new world, except for that old fellow Whitebeard, no one dares to refuse my mother's tea conversation. Also, Wano, it reminds me of that guy Kaido. Saying that, Charlotte Linlin looked at her children. Go and get Kaido's phone bug, I want to ask him about the situation. Even if it is family members, Charlotte Linlin's deterrence is something that the children will never dare to defy, not to mention that Charlotte Linlin is still in a relatively angry situation at this time, and she dare not neglect. quickly dialed Kaido's phone bug, and was lifted in front of Lot Linlin. Blue blue. Blue blue. Click. The phone rang twice, and when it was connected, the other party's gloomy voice immediately sounded. Linlin. Kaido. Charlotte Linlin showed a deep expression and said, "You should have read that newspaper today. Have you lost control of Wano-kuni?" She also has contact with Kaido to some extent, and she knows all the relevant information. Especially under her powerful organization, but knowing the information about Kaido's recent actions on other islands in the New World, and the fact that Moda became a general, it can be inferred to some extent. After a brief silence, Kaido said without changing his voice, "This should have nothing to do with you, old woman, right? Why doesn't it matter? Wano-kuni is the site I always wanted, because it's you. I didn't get involved." Charlotte Linlin opened her mouth and came. "I have always regarded you as my younger brother, Kaido, and Qiwuhai Phantom Beast, it is a lifetime of kindness." This is Charlotte Linlin's usual method for Kaido. The effect is very effective, but it also caused Kaido to shout dissatisfiedly, "Don't always show off your favors. Too many times, it will only become worthless. And the kindness of a lifetime, lousy is not so cheap." As you can imagine, Lousy left Wano-kuni to buy that kid. Although it was expected, Charlotte Linlin was still in disbelief when Kaido said it himself. In the former Rocks Pirate, she can claim that she knew Kaido best of all at the time. Otherwise, they wouldn't specially give Kaido the Phantom Beast fruit of the top combat power. This is not only a kindness, but also because Charlotte Linlin really treats Kaido as a younger brother. The arrogant Charlotte Linlin can regard him as a younger brother. Apart from the similar body shape, Kaido's strong potential and strength are also a major point. As long as there is enough time, Kaido will be able to arrive sooner or later, like her and Whitebeard's strong-class pirates. Perhaps after so many years of not seeing each other, it is not certain that the other party has reached this point. So at this moment, Kaido himself admitted that it really made her a little stunned, and her tone was a little uncertain. "It was that kid Moda who drove you away? What nonsense. Linlin." Kaido's angry voice came immediately. Lousy reached an agreement with that guy, and let him have Wano-kuni. Hearing this, Charlotte Linlin's mind was immediately aroused. What agreement? How can I tell you this kind of thing? Nazi is still a pirate. Kaido vetoed without hesitation, causing Charlotte Linlin's smile to froze immediately, and she became dissatisfied. "It's really stingy, Kaido. But as long as I occupy Wano-kuni, I can also know your agreement from Moda." Kaido ignored Charlotte Linlin's cliché, and said bluntly, "As long as you can do it, Linlin." Click one by one. The phone bug hung up on the other end. Charlotte Linlin immediately threw the phone bug away angrily, and was safely caught by a ball of white glutinous rice from the air without causing any damage. This kind of direct phone bug, which only has one, naturally needs to be well protected. After Katakuri caught it with his ability, he looked at Charlotte Linlin. "Mom, are you going to attack Wano-kuni?" Charlotte Linlin leaned back on the backrest and said, "Of course, since Kaido has withdrawn, I don't care what agreement they have. It just so happens that the kid's fruit source channel, I have been curious for a long time. Lion fruit can form the island into a floating sky island, which is the only point that Charlotte Linlin cares about. The other Wano-kuni combat power is not considered by Charlotte Linlin, a ruler who controls the entire world. As for Moda's combat strength, since he can reach an agreement with Kaido, his strength is not weak, but Kaido's strength is not as good as hers, so why should he be afraid of a kid who has only been in the sea for a long time?" Charlotte Linlin made a decision, and Kaido made a call to Moda's exclusive phone after thinking for a while. After a while, against the backdrop of a palm that was bigger than a cattail fan, the phone bug, as small as an ant, opened his eyes. Immediately afterwards, the phone bug with black shattered hair imitated Moda's casual tone and said, "Kaido, why did you call me specially? What's the matter? Although it's Wano-kuni, you should know about today's news. You deliberately triggered such an incident. With your calculating mind, you should know what will happen next." He. I didn't expect the world government's habitual hype. I thought it would send Marine to Wano-kuni as fertilizer for my fame. Hearing the mocking laughter from the other end of the phone, Kaido picked up the wine jug while holding the phone bug, took a sip and said with a smile, "Oh la 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 la, an affiliated island, since everyone knows the background of Wano-kuni. How could it be possible for Marine to take the action of going to war? New World is not the territory of the world government and Marine. The old lion in the past did more than you did, so he is also safe and secure in New World. Since you also know that it's a flattery, you must also know that Wano-kuni is a treasure of the New World, and there are many people who are jealous. With your reputation, Linlin is already planning to attack Wano-kuni. Hey, I didn't think of that. Is it because of you? Moda replied. Of course, after all, she knew that Laozi was entrenched in Wano-kuni at that time. Kaido held the phone bug, talking about his real purpose of this phone bug. The old woman is not so simple. Do you want Laozi to help you? You would be so kind. Moda mocked unceremoniously. Is it for some benefit? Of course, as I said before, pirates are all about profit. After Kaido finished speaking, he waited for Moda's answer. What waited was Moda, who refused without hesitation. Then you don't have to. There are some things you don't need to worry about, and you don't have to worry about affecting the artificial fruits you care about. Besides, the so-called flattery, but on the premise that the world government doesn't know my current strength, I didn't stay in the period when I was fighting with you. It's not certain. I can really take this opportunity to become the third emperor of the sea. Even a phone bug can't hide the confidence and arrogance shown in Moda's words at this moment. You really dare to say it, Moda? Then Laozi will wait for the result of what you said. Kaido's face turned gloomy. Seeing that the goal was not achieved, he was already planning to hang up the bug, but Moda started to turn his back on customers, and greeted Kaido. Kaido, you should care more about yourself than me. Kaido was feeling puzzled, and Moda's voice came immediately. Since Charlotte Linlin came for Wano-kuni, do you think Whitebeard will not be attracted by this incident? Don't forget, the Kozuki Oden you killed was a member of the Whitebeard regiment. Don't expect me to replace you are in charge. Kaido suddenly showed a look of bad luck, and then he became fearless like Moda, and killed Kozuki Oden. This is something that will be exposed sooner or later, but there is no information about Wano-kuna's lockup, which is a few years in advance. A few years ago, the undeveloped beast's pirates and himself would have been very afraid of Baihu Newgate, but now, everything is hard to say, otherwise, he would not start to show his activities in New World. It's really you, Moda brat, Kaido said coldly. Of course, don't we have a cooperative relationship? It just so happens that one of us has to face a sea emperor. Is it really a coincidence? Moda smiled viciously. It's okay not to say it, but when he said this, Kaido became a little anxious. Mud, reasonable ass shit. What can Linlin do with Whitebeard now? In the general city. With his feet on the desk, after hanging up the phone, Moda couldn't help showing a playful smile. It's not because of the coincidence of one person and one emperor, but because of Kaido's thoughtfulness. Even if there is no face-to-face conversation, Moda can guess one or two. Kaido probably thought he didn't know about his loving relationship with Charlotte Linlin. So if I promised him to help deal with Charlotte Linlin, the other party would definitely stand by and watch while offsetting Qiwuhai's kindness when he was fighting, and he might even turn back. Coupled with the reward for making them act, most of them are SAD's scientific research team. As for his behavior in Punk Hazard, as long as he inquires about the specific information of the island, he can guess what he has already done in this regard. In this way, if Kaido were to deal with Charlotte Linlin, it would really allow this careless guy to maximize his benefits. Therefore, the opponent is eyeing the man-made devil fruit, Moda just in case, let Whitebeard restrain Kaido. In this way, 100 can also let go of dealing with Charlotte Linlin in the future. The so-called cooperative relationship, under the condition of being impacted by a greater force, Moda will not believe that it can continue to be maintained stably, not to mention that Kaido himself is 10 lunatics who care about interests. The praise given by the world government, he didn't expect it to be this aspect. However, if they can really fight against Charlotte Linlin without losing the wind, the situation will not be what they expected. It's been 3 days since Shibai, not to mention it's been nearly a year. His breakthrough state is not the kind of strength he was fighting with Kaido at that time. Do you want to start preparing for the battle against the nations? Kozuki beside him asked quite nervously. She knew the strength of Wan Guo and the strength of the Shulo family. No need. I will personally go to this battle with Big Mom, and I will not let the battle involve Wano-kuni. Hearing this, Kozuki hugged Moda's arm anxiously. You are alone again. This time is different from Kaido's time. Moda smiled confidently. Don't worry, what's different from Kaido's time is my strength. Now I'm facing Big Mom, but I have absolute confidence that I won't fall into a disadvantage. It's just this battle. I don't want to have a full-fledged battle with the Charlotte family. Now it's not enough to annex all nations in one go. After all, no matter what the result is, it will probably be cheaper for others. So Charlotte Linlin's IWC, let her jump in for a couple of years before my retainers and national reserves really come up. Whether it is the land resources of the nations, or the extensive and practical abilities of the family, Moda is very keen to annex them, but this is also one of Moda's major goals in the New World. After reassuring Kozuki with some small gestures, he continued to order. Don't worry about the news about Big Mom for the time being, but I still order other news. At least there will be other pirates who will invade Wano. Notify the whole country to prepare for wartime. Of course, only those who have mastered Haki will participate. Although they are only those looking for death from overseas, it can just show the elite power needed to deter the sea. After Kozuki took the order, he took Robin, who was starting an internship in charge of affairs beside him, and conveyed Moda's words together. After the two went out, Moda got up to plan against Big Mom. In this way, it has been a week since the newspapers that boasted killing information, and during this period, the pirates who smelled the meat came, and no fewer than 10 ships attacked Wano. In the end, they all end with the annihilation of the whole army. That is to say, under the eddy waters and rising waterfalls at the beginning, many pirate ships had already fallen into the bottom of the sea, and the rest of the pirate ships that were lucky enough to break through the dangerous waters were also smashed one by one under the attack of the Wano warriors. Under Wano, which has attracted much attention today, it is all news that is attracting attention, and it is constantly published in daily newspapers. You must know that these pirate ships are all elites who have emerged from the Grand Line, and there are also some old pirates from New World whose rewards exceed those of master pirates. And even when Moda didn't make a move, for a while, for this country of warriors who only knew the name, its strength was more deeply imprinted in the memory of the people in Qiwuhai. The Charlotte family, who are always paying attention to Wanakuna's information on Wano Cake Island, also received the news for the first time. They didn't prepare to attack immediately. Just like other veteran pirates, they wanted to use these unafraid green pirates to test the water first, to see if they could force something out. Now it seems that Wanakuna's strength background is seen, which is a bit deeper than they expected. Mom, it seems that we have to make some preparations. Listening to the information, Perispero frowned tightly, and his long tongue curled up a little because of this. Indeed. Katakuri, who covered his mouth with a scarf, nodded and echoed. Wano is a tough piece of meat. If you want to take it, it seems that you have to pay a lot of money. Mommy. Charlotte Linlin laughed indifferently. Wano is of course not to be underestimated, but if you win Wano, the sources of arms and seastone, it is enough to make our nations have a richer heritage. Besides, as long as you catch Moda, Wano will be captured. Don't you think that my old lady will still lose to that brat? In the case of confrontation between the two major forces, the final impact on the overall situation is the result of the core battle between the two sides. This is the self-confidence of a veteran powerhouse, and even more so the arrogance of being the pirate emperor. Charlotte Linlin, after all, is still a big pirate of the same class as Golden Lion and Whitebeard. Katakuri, this time you will still guard the nations. Charlotte Linlin instructed that she would be most at ease in letting this most perfect child guard the base camp of all nations. Since those useless pirates are useless, Perispero. Charlotte Linlin laughed and looked at the eldest son next to her. Tell the news to the sea, Wano. My mother wants it. I want to see if the kid will continue to run away in embarrassment. Charlotte Linlin is going to use this obvious method, just as the 5 people with the highest power in the world government expected, either fight or flee, no matter which one will cause a great blow to Moda. Especially in New World, where there are extremely extensive contacts, Charlotte Linlin's words of declaring war, if Moda does not accept and flees, it will definitely be the biggest blow to New World's reputation. And just when Perispero was going to follow his mother's instructions and mobilize underground contacts to inform New World of the information, a piece of news was just rightly transmitted from outside. That was the 19th son of the Charlotte family, the clerk Charlotte Mondor, who was bringing the information he learned from the outside, and quickly came to Charlotte Linlin to report. Mom. That flying admiral, Moda, has sent a message that he will visit your tea party invitation in 3 days' time. As soon as these words came out, all the family members were stunned, and Charlotte Linlin also showed a surprised look. Regarding Wanakuna's plan, Charlotte Linlin has never expressed it in the sea. Now that she has just made up her mind, she just learned that the other party accepted the invitation to participate. After Charlotte Linlin dazed, she quickly realized, is that guy Kaido tipping off the news? Mom. Shall we continue to attack Wano-kuni next? Perispero looked at the loud voice sitting on the throne. What nonsense, Perispero. Charlotte Linlin reprimanded suddenly. Of course it's for the tea party. Mom? Didn't the tea party have been prepared not long ago? Surprised voices gradually rose from the children. After all, they were still discussing how to attack Wano-kuni, and now it was just Moda's visit, so how could they be preparing for a tea party? The other party is taking care of Mother's face. Looking at the doubting brothers and sisters, Katakuri explained, and if Moda takes the initiative to come, not only can save a lot of preparation, but also our side has the biggest advantage at home. Of course, there is another point. Katakuri did not explain, even if there are unpleasant incidents at that time, if the mother can defeat Moda, the follow-up Wano-kuni plunder will be even more fruitful. Just as Moda released the statement, when the new world spread, a pirate ship carrying the Whitebeard flag sailed into Wano-kuni, which also attracted great attention. Whitebeard set his sights on the wind at Wano-kuni, splashing like a tidal wave. People from all parties in New World are all excited about this. It's just that the news hasn't fermented for a long time, and the Whitebeard's ship left Wano-kuni in just 1 day. No one knows what happened during this period, but there is no doubt that the turmoil in the New World has been agitated and turbulent after this. Time. Go back to the days before. As expected by Moda, when the news spread that he became General Wano-kuni, Whitebeard will definitely visit. As the original Wano-kuni people and Kozuki retainer, Yizang is one of the captains who came to Wano-kuni to collect information this time. Just wanting to use Whitebeard to restrict Kaido, Moda will naturally not refuse to visit in the name of the captain of the Tibetan Islamic White Team. It doesn't even need Moda's explanation. He has already fully understood the domestic situation of his own myth. Asking anyone at random is based on facts and the lofty belief in the most effective Moda. If Izo hadn't been at sea for many years, and as Whitebeard's son, Kozuki Oden's retainer, and as a Wano-kuni citizen, he might have become one of these new generals. But after actually inquiring about the news, and when meeting Kozuki, he really understood all the culprits and what happened. Yizang didn't stay too long, and after he figured out the situation, he took the manpower. Return to Moby Dick. Everything is going as planned by Moda. It's just that when he left at the end, on the surface he was respectful to himself to hide his inner thoughts, but Moda understood every single word. This guy. At present, there is no objection to myself becoming General Wano-kuni. But in the future when the Red Sheath Samurai return, if Momonosuke wishes to become a general, he will choose to support the bloodline of the last heir of the Kozuki family and take back his rightful place in Wano-kuni. It really is Moda had a great disdain for being disgusted. You know, under his control, this country can definitely be called rapid development, and its form is changing. According to his prediction, within 10 years, the strength and economy of his territory will be vastly different from the past and even the present, and it may not be enough to summarize the great changes. Kozuki, after succeeding him or Kurozumi Orochi, has already become a doctor. Even Sukiyaki, as an ordinary craftsman, gradually faded into the memory of everyone in Wano-kuni and was forgotten, basically no different from death. As for Momosuke, he is still an extremely disgusting kid, and he deserves this idea. If he really wants to sit back and enjoy the benefits, it depends on whether he has the destiny to do so. As for Yizang, if Whitebeard hadn't been calculated, Moda would not have let him walk out of Wano-kuni unharmed, even if he didn't express his disgust. The malice in Moda's heart could not be felt when Kozuki was beside her, and she didn't know what Yizang was thinking when he left. Her current complicated state of mind is just a previous conversation with the other party, because the topic is related to people who have traveled to the future, and she can't help thinking about their future situation in Wano-kuni. Moda sensed this, but he wouldn't say it clearly if the other party didn't say it. Moda is not going to force his side on this when he wants Kozuki now. Even if blood is thicker than water, he can slowly use time to gradually reduce the impact on the fields that are good at attacking the mind and fighting. There are still more than 10 years in the future, but it is enough. Just like now, even in the daytime, when Moda hugs the other person's waist, there will be no obvious rejection, and even the shyness will gradually decrease, becoming a habit. Maybe in the future, there will be a good drama, Moda thought maliciously. While Moda still had time to enjoy it, the current state of New World has completely entered the undercurrent. The main reason is that the Charlotte family said that they will hold a grand tea party for Moda in half a month. It can be said that the annual tea party, not only the number of times, but also the time, was completely broken by Moda's sudden move. Everyone understood the significance of this tea party to the Charlotte family. A country with terrifying combat power, with the powerful devil fruit ability of Golden Lion, it can be expected that the Junlot family will have a heavy eye for Moda. Especially not knowing that the Charlotte family had secretly planned to go to war against Wano. Most people regarded this incident as an evolution that might be an alliance or even a draw. It's only been half a year, is there another tea party? In a certain vast manner, one of the underground kings, the Hyori Feld, stood at the floor-to-ceiling window with a cigar in his mouth, looking at the bright sunshine outside, and said to himself, "But this is really terrible news. This I still have to go to the next tea party, but I don't know what gift to bring this time." The world's largest economic newspaper. Sure enough, Linlin will hold another tea party specially. In the room, Morgans, the president of the big news agency, was sitting on a soft chair, flipping through an intelligence document, and let out a weird smile of unknown meaning. Is it such a sensitive time? Maybe there will be different trending news. This time I have to go there again to join in the fun. Almost all of them have the same idea. After hearing the news, the underground kings of the New World are all preparing to participate in this second Big Mom tea party this year. The focus of much attention, everyone knows that no matter whether the evolution of this tea party is good or bad, it will be a major evolution of the current New World pattern. The world government and Marine also began to pay more attention to this incident. They wanted to suppress Moda, but if Moda were to be a true alliance or even belong to Big Mom, the meaning would be completely different. Coincidentally, another Marine who listened to Whitebeard sent a message that the Moby Dick was heading towards the area where Kaido was active, and it seemed that he was going there with an evil purpose. All of a sudden, Marine had a complete headache. Thus, the period of boosting newspapers began. Since the turmoil of the Shuangwang, New World has once again entered a white-hot stage. Now the power of the Double Emperor is divided into two ends. One side is Whitebeard, who seems to be looking for Kaido's trouble, and the other side is the Flying Admiral Moda attending Big Mom's tea party. Both parties are the most exciting events in New World today. The weak feel panic, while the strong have complicated mentality. For the second wave of terror caused by New World since the era of great pirates. After learning that Whitebeard has indeed started to trouble Kaido, and the day of the tea party is getting closer, Moda starts his journey to the waters of Toto Land. New World, all countries. Although the territory of the Charlotte family is called All Nations, the actual territory is only composed of 34 islands surrounding Cake Island. The reason why these islands have such a country name is because Charlotte Linlin wants to build this place into a place where all races communicate on an equal footing, so you can see almost all races in the world living together here, of course. Whether you are happy or not is another matter. The composition of the entire Charlotte family is based on this core where different members are born, and the management of the island is also composed of family members who are responsible for the status of ministers. Therefore, at such a highly anticipated tea party, children of all kinds can be seen entertaining guests from afar on their respective islands. As long as you bring a gift, and your identity is not world government or marine, you will be welcomed by all nations. Until the day of the tea party, you will be led by the ministers of each island to the Cake Island in the core area. Among the guests, the more prominent ones were the 6 emperors of the Dark World that the Charlotte family had befriended. Morgans, president of World Economic News, queen of the Pleasure District Stussy, king of Hyori Feld, shipping to Umit, Warehouse Kipson and Big Hands Undertaker Peak. These characters have long been treated with generous gifts by Perispero and other important ministers. Mommy. Every tea party is so exciting and lively, filled left pointing pointer. On the top floor of the cake castle, in the extremely spacious open-air hall, Big Mom sat on a huge specially made sofa seat, watching the guests filling up one after another in the hall below, and let out a burst of cheerful laughter. Armand. After coming out of the room, Charlotte Linlin turned her face to the side, glanced at the third daughter standing respectfully outside the bedroom door, and said happily, "How about, have all the invited guests come? Is the tea party going to be available soon? Announcing the start?" "Soon, Mom." The eldest daughter Compat next to Armand whispered. "Most of the guests have arrived now, but this time the protagonist, the Flying Admiral Moda, has not yet arrived." "That stinky brat, you don't want to let me go." Hearing this, the expression on Charlotte Linlin's face immediately became a little uneasy, and the aura she exuded caused the girls beside her to break out in cold sweat in shock. Although they are all family members with bloodlines, they have a deformed relationship under Charlotte's control. In Charlotte Linlin's eyes, their children are not very important. Maternal love. But in the case of anger and bad mood, even the most favored category will be reprimanded, and the rest of the children will even have their lives taken away. "Mom, don't be angry." Bree, who was not far away, immediately stepped forward to help the sisters. "Big brother, category Big brother has already set out to welcome that Moda." "That's really good news, Bree." Hearing that, Charlotte Linlin's expression immediately changed back to a smile, and then surrounded by all the daughters, she walked out of the cake castle. "Stussy, you are coming to this tea party." Hearing Charlotte Linlin shout, Stussy didn't hesitate, and approached with her slender waist slightly twisted, with a sweet smile on her pretty face. "No matter what time Linlin's tea party is, of course I will come. This time it took a lot of effort to bring you a special gift, but it is a famous dessert from the Fishman Island, Linlin." Seeing Stussy like this, the other emperors of the old rival also showed gifts that made Charlotte Linlin's heart ecstatic. Charlotte Linlin showed a bright smile, and immediately led these distinguished guests to the main table with her. Still being led by Charlotte Linlin, Stussy asked casually, "Linlin, I heard that this tea party is specially held for that Flying Admiral, and I am very interested in him." "That guy doesn't seem to be here yet," Charlotte Linlin said lightly, and then looked at the others. "Are you also very interested in that kid?" "Of course, after all, the other party is a man of the day in New World." Feld laughed, and the others also nodded their judgments. "Ah, Wano-kuni is also considered a treasure," Stussy said directly. "If you can open a branch of Happy Street in it, maybe you can increase your profit a lot." Hearing this, Charlotte Linlin smiled, then looked at Morgans and said, "Morgans, shouldn't you have contact with Moda? The news that the other party explained to me came from you." "I don't know where he got the information about my phone bug, but he only talked with me about attending Linlin's tea party, and there was no other communication," Morgans immediately explained. "Mom, I'm just curious." "Morgans, don't be nervous." Big Mom waved her hand indifferently. Just as she was about to continue to say something, she suddenly noticed something out of the corner of her eye. Her eyes lit up and she turned her head to the distant sky, showing a bright smile. "That guy is here." When the 6 underground emperors heard the words, they all followed her gaze, and in the distance they could see a floating sky island in the sky, slowly approaching. "He will come out with something like this, and now in the entire New World, he is the only one." As the floating sky island drew closer, the 2 people on it gradually appeared in the eyes of everyone at the tea party. Except for the impressive category of the Charlotte family, there is a strong and tall black-haired man with a long sword on his waist. He is now a man of the New World, General Wano-kuni, and Flying Admiral Moda. The present guests participated in the second tea party this year again. It can be said that in addition to the prestige of the Charlotte family, they came for Moda and the possible development of this incident. On the Flying Island, many people who saw Moda's face for the first time, this way of appearance all reminded of the Golden Lion's notoriety and swallowed subconsciously. Flying Admiral, Stussy looked at Moda and thought. As Queen of the Pleasure District, World Government CPO secret agent, she obviously attaches great importance to Moda's intelligence. Stealing everyone's attention from the tea party, Moda also glanced at the crowd one by one. Although it was the first time I saw several figures, they were not much different from the images in my memory, especially the Queen of the Pleasure District Stussy. Looking at Moda's probing eyes, Stussy not only did not evade at all, but instead gave him a sneaky look. For her, in the process of training to become a CPU, these skills of using herself as a means are commonplace. It's a pity that he was immediately ignored by the other party. Mom. It's really a majestic and familiar way to play games. Finally we meet each other. Moda. Charlotte Linlin sat up from her seat. Her eyes happened to meet Moda's after landing, and she greeted with a smile on her face. This is Charlotte Linlin's usual superficial image. Before she has a purpose, she doesn't mind showing her gentle side to outsiders at the tea party. It's like a wolf in sheep's clothing, but she's even scarier than a wolf. I wanted to meet you a long time ago. Charlotte Linlin stared at Moda. This tea party is specially organized for you. Charlotte Linlin opened her hands, and the pastry and tableware in the venue were immediately endowed with soul, and she began to sing and dance, showing a cheerful atmosphere. That's really my honor. Reaching out without hitting the smiling person, Moda also pulled away a chair opposite Charlotte Linlin, sat down slowly on the main table, and scanned the surrounding people. These are the well-known underground kings in the New World. When they saw Moda mentioning themselves, they couldn't help showing a slight smile, greeted each other in a friendly manner, introduced themselves one by one, and took this opportunity to get some impression points in Moda's heart when they met for the first time. As long as they can leave some impressions, they may be able to follow up for them, and there is an opportunity to bring spleen benefits to Wano-kuni. However, everyone still has their sense of proportion. This is still the tea party held by Charlotte Linlin. They just introduced themselves briefly, and then handed over the leading right of the topic to Big Mom. Charlotte Linlin in the chief seat saw this and didn't say much. After all, she accepted the other party's gift, and the other party wanted to expand her interests, so she didn't want to get angry about it, so she grinned, stood up and shouted happily to the audience. Road. Since everyone is here, I will announce here that the tea party will officially begin. Everyone can start, and enjoy all kinds of delicacies. Immediately, the soothing and melodious music sounded, and amidst the excitement, Moda was also enjoying the atmosphere. At least on this table of food, there was no need to worry about any problems. The atmosphere of the tea party was quite different from the previous ones. This time, it can be said that at the very beginning, it was the most lively time. Usually, the guests at the table were already chatting enthusiastically with each other. On the main table, between Charlotte Linlin and Moda. But both of them seemed to be very patient, enjoying the delicious food and tea on their respective tables attentively, making one wonder whether this tea party was really held just for eating and drinking. How? Moda. Charlotte Linlin began to speak. These are all carefully selected by me. Every dessert and tea is definitely a treasure. It's very good, no wonder so many people refuse to miss your tea party invitation every year. As if she didn't understand the other meaning of Moda's words, Charlotte Linlin let out a proud laugh, then looked directly at the other party and said, I have always paid attention to you since you appeared in New World. Some I'll talk to you face to face too. This is already entering the theme. Under the eyes of the two, the 6 underground kings around the main table have left this area at some point. I don't know what you want to talk about. Moda also put down the teacup in his hand and asked. When you came to New World, you also experienced it. There are countless pirates who snooped on your territory. Fighting alone, it is difficult to survive for a long time in this New World sea. Charlotte Linlin laughed and said, So, do you want to make an alliance with my mother? Moda. While speaking, he called a tall, pink-haired woman to him. This is my 9th daughter, Charlotte Bloyer, who I value very much. You probably don't have a marriage right now. As long as you want, she will marry for you. From now on, the Charlotte family will form an unbreakable alliance with you, Moda. Wow. As soon as Charlotte Linlin's voice fell, the tea party hall, which was originally quiet and silent, fell into an uproar in an instant. What? Marriage? My God. It's really about winning over an alliance. VIP table. Morgans, already in a state of surprise and excitement, couldn't help pulling out his camera equipment and began to record this intense scene. Sure enough, it didn't come in vain this time, it's the incredible news. Stussy looked at the two people who were talking, and looked a little happy on the surface, but the action of holding the handbag was a little bit tighter. Among the hustle and bustle, Moda still had a calm face. Then what if I refuse? As soon as these words came out, the noisy scene suddenly fell into silence, and there was only the sound of the breeze blowing quietly. Everyone was startled, no matter if it was a member of the Charlotte family or a visiting visitor. Some people expected it, but they still didn't. Chunin couldn't help shouting in shock. He really refused Charlotte Linlin's mom solicitation. And Charlotte Linlin in front of the main seat, the gentle and kind smile on her face also froze, and her gaze fell on Gerd with a chilling gaze, reject. But no one has ever dared to refuse my proposal at a tea party. This is the truth. After all, those who came to the Charlotte Linlin tea party were all those who succumbed or made friends with the forces under its deterrence. Ignoring Charlotte Linlin's aura, Moda smiled completely nonchalantly. Now, isn't there? The voice fell to Setsuna. Countless eyes moved back and forth between Moda and Charlotte Linlin, and the guests present looked at each other, silent as if chilling. This tit-for-tat, shameless scene made many people gasp. He really rejected mom. Not far away, Katakuri murmured when he heard this, and the family members present looked at each other tacitly, and each of them quietly held their own weapons, ready to fight, and at the same time consciously keep guests away from the previously bustling tea party venue. Dare to refuse my old lady's kindness? Do you really think that with the fruit of that old lion, you think you are qualified to challenge me? Charlotte Linlin narrowed her eyes slightly, and a palpitating, terrifying momentum began to condense around her and attack towards her. Good intentions, don't make people laugh, Charlotte Linlin. Moda said with a sarcasm. Put the idea on Wano-kuni, you should have expected this kind of scene. The next moment, the equally terrifying conqueror's haki suddenly erupted from his body, heading towards Charlotte Linlin's direction, overwhelming. Two conquerors belonging to the top powerhouses in the world collided back and forth wantonly in the hall, making the banquet like being involved in a storm. The ferocious airwaves were higher and higher, blowing away the tableware and guests. Bawang meets. Countless people shouted in shock, and then they were shocked by the aura emanating without the slightest scruple. Surprised by the strength of Mo de Conqueror's confrontation, Charlotte Linlin suddenly opened her hands, and Prometheus and Zeus endowed with souls immediately appeared beside her. Thunder. Fire from the sky. The moment the voice fell, the thunder roared in all directions, and Zeus instantly turned into a purple-black thundercloud. Countless thunderbolts rolled and surged, condensing into a huge thunder column, and the terrifying fire column spit out by Prometheus, slashed straight down at Moda. Mom. This is the hall. Paraspero shouted. But obviously, there was no way to stop Charlotte Linlin, who was in a rage at the moment. Moda drew out the red sakura, watching the attack that was getting closer and closer to him. Two consecutive bright sword lights flashed away. The people in the distance only felt a blur in front of their eyes, and before they could clearly see the trajectory of the sword, the originally menacing and thick thunder pillars and flames were chopped into 4 sections, and suddenly turned into countless small arcs of lightning and fireworks. Exploded in the air. The underground kings looked at the dispelled terrorist attack and couldn't help being shocked. Not to mention that Charlotte Linlin has such a great momentum at the first level, even this man of the new world, his sword skills seem to be extremely superb. Mommy. Swordsmanship, lion fruit, you are really the same as that old lion. Seeing that the attack didn't work, Charlotte Linlin let out a strange laugh. However, the golden lion at its peak, my mother will not be afraid, not to mention you came here alone to capture you alive. Wano-kuni can still capture you, and I will dig out all the secrets in you. Napoleon. Charlotte Linlin, who had torn her face, no longer had the slightest scruples, and she didn't even care about the guests' present's intentions when they heard what she said. Immediately raising his right hand again, the hat on top of his head immediately turned into a giant sword and jumped into his hand. The terrifying flames immediately entangled Charlotte Linlin's body and the Emperor's sword in her hand, like a terrifying flame ghost image, displayed in front of everyone. Mom is serious. Paraspero hurriedly backed away, and there were also other members of the Charlotte family, not only the king-to-king sea tradition, but also the mother who was in a serious state. The terrorist attack caused by them was beyond their reach. Seeing this, Moda raised his palm upwards, but suddenly found that the cake island under his feet floated into the air without his control. Charlotte Linlin naturally noticed this small detail, and then said with a cruel smile, I have been in contact with the Golden Lion for far longer than you have obtained the lion fruit. If you think you come here on your own initiative, the old lady will not see that you want to take the battlefield. Are you thinking about moving to 10,000 kingdoms? Before you came, I gave a lot of soul blessings to Cake Island. Hearing this, Moda was startled, because the ownership of the soul can offset Piao Piao's control. He really didn't expect the soul fruit to have this effect. Just because you came here alone, you dare to refuse my old lady's proposal. If that's the case, please stay with me completely. Charlotte Linlin grinned grinningly, and suddenly merged into the raging flames on the blade, instantly shining brightly like the sun. Emperor Sword Broken Blade. The blade was raised high, and it slashed straight down towards Moda at a terrifying speed that made people feel chills all over the body. Laugh. Before the blade's edge arrived, a suffocating and appalling high temperature hit the face. The heat wave was so violent that the surrounding air seemed to be completely melted by it. Looking up at the knife coming, Moda's pupils were red, and he drew his sword again and jumped up. The terrifying conquerors spread out from the whole body, and then entwined around the red Sakura, combined with the devoured armed color. A terrifying dark red edge burst out suddenly. The surrounding tens of meters of air seemed to be pulled away at this moment, gathered at the tip of the sword, turned into a sharp and unstoppable sword energy, and slashed away with a mighty roar. Deafening roars sounded under the two attacks. The weapons did not collide with each other. That seemed to be another momentum conflict under the entanglement of each other. All the ground burst open, and the wind and waves that were set off even crossed the huge distance on the Cake Island and spread to the sea area of the port, making the originally calm sea begin to roll up turbulent waves. Cake Castle, even under the impact of such a close-range storm, began to vibrate violently. Boom. 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 The muffled sounds sounded one after another, almost shaking the entire island one after another. The positions where the two were standing were already surrounded by huge potholes that had collapsed tens of meters in succession. Under the impact of the terrifying momentum, the two were still deadlocked without moving a bit. Moda Brat. The seemingly counterattacking attack, indeed, Charlotte Linlin couldn't help but screamed, and then, being horrified, directly broke through the conqueror's entanglement under the Emperor's sword. Boom. Where Charlotte Linlin was standing, a huge fan-shaped impact crack of tens of meters was directly and obviously blasted, and countless debris spread. Charlotte Linlin was directly shaken away, and she couldn't stop backing abruptly until she hit the cake fortress. There was a violent vibration. How is that possible? Mom was knocked back. The children who knew Charlotte Linlin best witnessed this scene. Their eyes widened and they shouted in disbelief. Even the underground kings looked at the battlefield from a distance, and it was hard to accept. Charlotte Linlin, that is a monster who has been used to be a natural destroyer since she was a child.